Our meeting for March 14th, 2019. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And just to let you know, today is Pi Day for you mathematicians and engineers in the crowd. And March 14th. And just a couple of fun facts about, well, not fun maybe, but facts about Pi Day. Albert Einstein was born on March 14th, and Stephen Hawking died on March 14th. So Pi Day is important in the mathematical community, and I hope our children in math classes had fun with Pi Day today. So with that, please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we're starting tonight with Classified Employee of the Month. And I have to say that this classified employee is very, very special to me. He's the custodian at Portal School. I hired him 20 years ago, maybe. Jose, when did we do this? Anyway, he's been, and Connie tells me that I get credit for hiring him, but she gets credit for keeping him. But Leslie was in the mix there too, so all of us have had experiences with Jose, and he's a very special man, and I'm very proud to present him with the Classified Employee of the Month. So, Jose, I'm going to read what people said about you, but first you have to come up and stand at the podium so I can embarrass you.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Okay, so here's how it's going to go. I'm going to read some things about you, and then we'll give you a chance to speak if you want to, introduce your lovely family if you'd like to, and then I have some, and anyone else who wants to speak on your behalf, and then I have some gifts for you. So I'm going to start by reading what the staff wrote about you. Jose is one of the most dedicated employees I've seen in all the years I've worked in CUSD. He does his job well, is always on time, and pays great attention to detail. There is no job that's too big or too small for him, and he does everything with a smile and a great positive attitude. He is proactive and makes sure the school office knows of any needed maintenance work in an effort to keep our campus safe and clean. He takes great care of all custodial supplies inventory with precision. His ready-to-go spirit is an inspiration to us all. We cannot think of any day at Murdoch Portal without Jose. Jose is friendly and loved by our staff and students. He treats the school like his home and our staff as family. He is very patient with students and is a role model for substitute custodians. He and his family are always part of our school, and they share their wonderful culture and traditions with us. Jose truly deserves the CUSD Classified Employee of the Month honor. And I have to say, I couldn't agree more. Is there anyone else who would like to speak about Jose?
On behalf of my father and our family, we would like to thank Phyllis, Leslie, our current principal, for giving my father the opportunity to do what he loves the most, which is be at Portal. He does not want to retire. He always jokes around, but he loves his job, and I mean, it's a pleasure having him as a father, but he loves being at home as much as he loves being at Portal. So thank you for allowing him to be in doing what he loves the most.
Thank you very much for recognizing my job at Murdoch Portal. Thank you.
We have more to talk about. Jose is above and beyond the most inspirational man that I know. He is caring to the heart, and he brings you, he resonates love for his job and everything that he does. Every movement that he makes around that campus, every interaction he has with students is a love for people and a love for the work that he does. the littlest, smallest cleanup to fulfilling a need, he does that with a care and love that is beyond all measures. So Jose, we care about you, and it's filled with the love that the students have said to you. And there are some beautiful things that they have said to you. Congratulations, you're the best. There's one up here that is written in Spanish. They speak of his jokes, his sense of humor, his ability to make a difference in the recycling program and how that rolled out at Murdoch Portal. How it takes just one man or one woman can make a difference in this world. And for us, it's you. And they spoke of you in that particular way. But it's not just these few words that they said. They spoke billions. Well, maybe not billions, but many, many words. This is just a sampling. And this, Jose, is more.
Wow.
And all of the students, young and old, even us, appreciate you, and we could not stop them from writing notes of appreciation and caring for you. So thank you so, so very much for all you do.
Do we have any other speakers? Jose, would you or your daughter like to introduce the rest of your family?
Oh, come with me, my wife, my little grandson, Alex, my son-in-law, Rolando, my first baby, Hector Jose, and everything. Recognized to Mrs. Phyllis, my first principal, Mrs. Leslie, the second principal, Mrs. Rowe, the last principal. Thank you very much for bringing this moment special in my life.
Thank you so much, Jose. Wait a minute, Jose, I have something for you. So this is what I read. This is a little proclamation, and this is a gift for you and your family.
Thank you much. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Thank you. Oh, wait a minute.
Oh, that'd be really good, yeah.
Leslie, stay there. I'm coming.
There you go.
Yay.
She'd like a Portal staff picture. And
Okay, you're in Portal, but they lent me this shirt. I gotta give it back. I ordered a 25 shirt, but I don't know when they're coming back.
Or a t-shirt or a sweatshirt.
I did a t-shirt too.
aren't you glad that we shared some important people with you? Look at all the good. Look at this. You guys, there's all the.
Which way? I know. I look like I'm supposed to be the speaker. I forget. Oh, okay.
Why don't you go back and sit down? Let's go back. Come on.
Okay,
Awesome.
Thank you. Okay.
guess so. Oh well.
Less distraction.
We'd love to have you all stay for the rest of our wonderful meeting, but if you have other things to do, we would understand if you left. So thanks so much for coming.
Thank you for coming.
So next on the agenda is board agenda approval. Is there a motion?
I can move to approve the agenda of March 14th, 2019.
A second?
I'll second it.
Satish seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Employee organization communication. Do we have anyone here? Kai, are you speaking tonight? I'm not speaking tonight. Okay.
Britt's SEIU.
Britt, are you speaking tonight? Okay.
Evening. My name is Britt Britton. I'm going to try to get through this without mumbling too much because I'm pretty tired. I started March 1st as the SEIU president, and it's been a very busy schedule. I've been trying to communicate with all my members. I've been trying to help people with a tough time, but we're doing great. We're coming together. I'm very proud of SEIU right now and all of our membership. So I look forward to working with everybody and making this the great place that I've been working since I was 17 years old. So I love it here. I went to school here, and it's something that I take very, very heart, right here. I put everything I got into it. So thank you for nominating, and thank you for selecting me as president.
Thank you, Britt, and congratulations on your new office. Anybody else here from an employee organization? Okay, the next item on the agenda is public comment, and let me just make a few comments about public comment. Each speaker will have 3 minutes, and we would like you to honor that. And if when I say or when you hear Renee's buzzer go off, please finish your sentence quickly. It's hard for us to cut people off. It's much better for us if you can wind your comments up. We listen very carefully to all public comment. We are not allowed to respond because it's not an agenda item. So we will not respond to your comments, but please know that we listen carefully. So with that, we have, and again, just one last reminder, 3 minutes, please. So our first speaker is Anu Pragada. Am I saying it right? Okay.
Hi. It was a very nice celebration. It was really good to see that employees are celebrated. And I'm here to bring up a person, Jessica Livoti, who we heard that the district is planning to end her contract. She is a SDC teacher in my son's classroom in room 7 at the Vargas. I can speak about how appropriate she is as a teacher for an hour, but since I have 3 minutes, I tried to write it down. So I'm going to read. That way I don't go over to the minutes. So, like I said, we heard this news that district is planning to end her contract. We don't know why. We don't want to know why. We just know that she's right for that classroom. She's right for our children's lives. She's been making a difference. She's been really doing good things. It's really a devastating news for us as a parents because things seems to be going right after, like, if you have a special need child and child with autism, and you will know how difficult it is. And when things go right, you want them to go right. I'm sorry. I'm gonna just try to continue to read. So the reason these classrooms are set up for the multiple years is to have familiarization with teacher, people, and place, as transitions are very hard for kids with autism. I have not seen a teacher as good, as appropriate for a special need classroom as Jessica in entire 7 years my son has been in SDC. She really pays close attention to students' needs and tailor programs to challenge and grow them. Not every teacher is as capable as she is for a special day class. While talking to other parents, they share the same feeling. She has been a game changer. There's a lot of progress happened in the last 7 months in her classroom that didn't happen in the last 7 years. She has done very customized, really IEP means IEP to her. It's not a cookie cutter approach for her. She pays attention to every single child's need, their behavior, how to control them, how to work properly, how to communicate with parents with needs and things like if today I received an email from her that, oh, your son's getting very light sensitive lately. Is there something going on? Or like even bring things that sometimes we may not notice because in the night there is no sun. The sun is in the daytime and he's in school at that time. I probably won't know that he's having light sensitivity for a week while I get that kind of response from her. It's really the attention to detail that she put in this kid's life that makes them progress. And I don't know, you probably have people coming here complaining about teachers, but I don't know how many times you'll have every single parent coming here to say how good a teacher has been for their kids. And
that was the bell. I don't know if you could hear it. Can you turn the volume up on
yeah,
that?
and I'll finish in, I have, is it 3 minutes over?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll just say that I just plead you guys to retain Jessica because she's been a fantastic teacher, and I don't know how a district can find even a replacement for such a good teacher. So thank you.
Thank you. And you can make that a little louder for us? Okay, great. So our next speaker is Sunil Wadua, is that right?
Hello, board members, and I'm Sunil. I'm a same teacher, same parent in the same classroom Anu was just talking about Jessica. She's a phenomenal teacher, I can tell you, and I share the entire emotion that Anu just expressed here. The celebration we had with Jose here is fantastic. The great news is that Jose had children who can write notes for him. Jessica is a teacher whose children cannot write such notes. So we are here as a child's representative, kind of voicing the effort that she's putting in the classroom. And I've heard, we send the notes to some of the superintendents, some of your board members. We heard you cannot talk about the particular teacher. We fully understand that. At the same time, we also want to ask the board here, in a public setting here, what is the SDC class contract terms you have? How do you renew them? How do you evaluate them? What are the inputs they get from the parents like us for the children who can't talk for themselves, right? So that's a challenge I want to put to the team here and say, please reconsider, because Jessica is one teacher, like her, Anush has said, in last 7 years we have been in the district, nobody talked to us in that encouraging, collaborative, creative, following through, and I can just keep going on. She's just phenomenal teacher who understands. She goes above and beyond. She sends videos of her children. She sends notes in the weekends. She sends messages to us overnights. A child after school holidays, we say he's not ready to go back to school. She sends videos for him encouraging, please come to school, be fun activity. So a teacher like that cannot be just dismissed for personal reasons. It's much more beyond that in my take. I don't know what the challenges are the district has. I don't, probably we cannot talk about it, fully understand it. But at the same time, a teacher like that is very hard to get. And we as a parent being here in this district, and I had challenges in the past, Shelly Ota can talk about from our special case, on our case, we had tremendous challenges in the teachers in the past class. No attention being given, not even understanding what the child needs, not even working with the child to make it happen. I know school district spends a lot of money. We really appreciate the amount of effort and the money you spend on the teacher, but a teacher like Jessica is far more valuable than another SDC teacher who's just going to do an IEP class, IEP session, right? And as Jessica, like Anu said, She has done IEP full-fledged. She has worked on IEP programs. And at the same time, she's not just doing what we are asking her to do. She challenges us back too at the same time. And she has followed all the district policies. She's followed all the district rules. She works within the guidelines of the district, and she's made a huge difference for the classroom. Taking it something personally to her heart and making it happen for the children is something that I have not seen in the district so far. So what I ask is, please consider this request from our parents, from the children who can't talk for themselves, and it means a lot to us if Jessica is retained in the classroom, not just for this classroom setting the children are in the class, but years to come. She's got her heart into it. And I've seen teachers, I've talked to principals from the past life, they have not had so much heart that this special needs class needed. So thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity for us to speak here, and I request you to please reconsider the decision.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, Phyllis. Are we permitted to ask questions or no? No? All right, thank you.
This is not an agendized item, so we are not.
All right, thank you.
Sharman Roman?
Members, I'm actually on the same classroom as Jessica Leputis. My daughter, I have 2 special need kids, and actually, I never seen a teacher in these 9 years who devoted her heart to this profession. And my daughter was totally non-functional until last year, until she placed in Jessica's class. She doesn't even know ABC, 1, 2, 3, nothing. And now she's writing. Now she can express her feelings. As a mom of special need, it's a big thing, huge thing. And I feel she's an asset to the school district. So it's heartbreaking for all the parents of Room 7 that her contract is discontinued. So please, I plead you guys to reconsider that so that her contract is renewed. And I feel like she will be asset not for our kids, is for the district, for the upcoming future also. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Galen Davis.
So before I start, I am actually speaking about an agendized item. So.
Would you like to wait to speak when it's on, or now? It's your choice.
I think I'd like to wait, actually.
All right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put you back over here then. So what is the item, Galen?
It's the 5th grade Human Growth and Development curriculum.
Okay, and this is the same one, right? 7.1. 7.1. Got it. Okay.
It.
All right. Next we have Gary. Yen. Yeah.
Good afternoon, board members. My son is a special kids that's in Jessica class. He's in 4th grade. I can tell you my personal observations for the past 2 years. I have never seen so much improvement in him. He wasn't interactive at all. Ever since he goes to her class, he becomes very active. He wants to participate in things. She has changed his life. And my concern is, if this teacher leaves, will the board be able to find someone that's qualified as her? She has passion for each student in her class, as you heard from other other parents. And my concern is I do not want my son to have interrupt education, like someone replace her is not as good as her. So please reconsider to keep her. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Dipali Kulkarni.
Hello, board members. My son, he is in 4th grade. He's a special needs child. He's in Miss Levoti's classroom. I'm here about the same topic. My son, so Miss Lavoti was my son's teacher for the last 2 years, and we have come to the United States in 2014. And one of the main reasons we came here was to explore the wonderful and mature interventions and processes and the education system in this country. Because I come from India, where the awareness level for autism is not as it should be. The educational resources are not as they should be. So I came here with a lot of hope, and I had no doubt in my mind when I came here that I needed to come to Cupertino, because they told me this district was the best. My husband works in a company in Silicon Valley, so our obvious choice was to come and live in Cupertino because we wanted to go to a school here. So we didn't even know anything, but we just came, rented a house in Cupertino. So we have been in this district, or my son has been going to a school in this district for the last 4.5 years. And I can say that Ms. Livoti is one of the best teachers he's had. Two things that I'd like to iterate. She's extremely involved in her children. She really knows what's going on. She's on top of everything that's going on. My son has had a lot of challenges with feeding. He's had a lot of challenges with behavior. He has a lot of challenges with his health because he has an autoimmune disease as well. So there are a lot of things going on, not just academic. And I feel that she's very effective in understanding all these challenges. So we have had a really good experience. She's very collaborative. She's extremely communicative. And one of the rare things that I found with her is she actually let us know what our son or what our child has done good in the class. She'll tell me, oh, today your son said this word. Do you know he can say this? Did you know he likes this particular thing that you send? Because these are things my son cannot tell me. These are things I don't know because he's in the class for 6.5 hours, which is a big part of his day. So she's been a great teacher. She's very passionate, and I think she likes what she's doing. It's very important to have a teacher who likes what she's doing, especially with special needs kids, because these are kids who have so many issues. You really need to love these kids to be able to work with them, to actually make a difference in their lives. And I think she loves our kids. I can see it in her behavior. I can see it in her involvement. So
Your 3 minutes are up, so could you wind up, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Please reconsider your decision, and I hope Ms. Livoti can stay back as my son's teacher. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next speaker, it's hard for me to read this. Is it David? Is it? It could be Daniel, yes? Okay.
Hello. Apologies for the froggy voice. I'm recovering from a cold. I also similarly have children in Miss Livoti's classroom. I have 2 boys. She's been their teacher for some time now. They're both in different grades. One is in his first year with her. The other is in his second, is moving on to middle school. Similarly, very frustrated in that in the second part of the IEP that was designed with Jessica and over the last several years, it's not really going to be fulfilled if she's not as heavily involved within that process. The children that I have are extraordinarily difficult to deal with, similar to, I think, many of the other parents that are struggling. And having a teacher that is able to facilitate their learning needs within inside of a structure and have measurable growth that is able to be defined and have checkpoints that she's able to come back with us and others that are involved in the IEP has been fantastic, and has not been something which was emblematic of the teachers that we had previously. Although they were fine people and they were very, very good teachers in that regard, they just didn't have the same measure of effectiveness. So I similarly would hope to ask for you to reconsider or an abate so that it could be discussed or reviewed further. But I think it's very telling. You must have a litany of these decisions to make for a host and a range of staff members. The fact that this many parents from one classroom are here tonight to ask for the exact same thing, I think it's reflective of how important this teacher has been to the lives and the effectiveness for our kids. And that'd be it.
Thank you very much.
That's it. Those are for items, right?
So these 2, so we also have Dr. Christina Sheridan to speak under 7.1. Did you want to speak now, or did you want to wait until the item comes up? Okay, perfect. All right, that ends public comment, and we're on to consent. We have a lot of consent items, and for those of you in the audience, just know that these are things that either routine in nature or that we have discussed at length previously. So it's not new for any of us. So I'd like a motion for the consent items.
You want to start with 4-1 separate, right?
Oh, do we need to pull one? Okay, so I'm sorry.
Pull it, we just vote on it separately.
So we're voting on 4-1 separately. All right, so we need a motion for 4-1.
I move to approve item 4.1.
Second.
Okay, all in favor for item 4.1, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one recusing. I always get the words wrong. Okay, now the next set of consent items we can vote all together.
I can move 4.2 through how many? 4.16.
And a second?
Seconded.
Satish seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, this one carries 5-0. Information presentation, the district's reopener, that would be you, Stacy. Okie dokie.
Good evening. So tonight I am bringing forward, we are getting ready to open up negotiations again with our CEA, our teacher contract. We just concluded recently in the last 2 months, and we are trying to get ahead of the game and start negotiating for our 1920 contract. So tonight is an information item only. Per education code, we need to bring our items forward so the public can see what the district's intent is. It's merely for information. We will bring our articles back at hopefully the next board meeting, along with CEA's articles, and we will ask for approval at that time. So this year, typically for our 3 years, we always bring back our compensation and our health and welfare, so we are presenting those as two of the articles that we'd like to sunshine. In addition, we're doing Article 7 and Article 12, which are teaching hours and class sizes, and so within those there's a lot of different areas within those articles that we don't go into until we've actually started negotiations, but that is what our intent is for this year.
Okay, this is an information item, so it's not discussion, but it's open for clarifying questions if anyone has any. Jerry, go ahead.
Just on, there was a mention of Collaborative Tuesdays for Article 12. I was just wondering what's a Collaborative Tuesday?
So we call our Tuesdays our early release for our elementary, so we call them Collaborative Tuesdays because of what they do in the afternoon.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from board members? Okay, thank you, Stacy. Next item, 5.2, the 5-year plan of developer fees. Jeff, is that you? No, it's not Jeff. It's Dorothy. Okay, Dorothy.
Good evening. This is an informational presentation for you, the 5-year plan for our developers fee. So we also have an attachment of the 5-year report that we are presenting to you. Government Code section require us that we present this to the developer, to the board. We do also an annual report that has been taken to the board for approval back in October, and this is the 5-year report. I would take some clarifying questions if you have any.
Any questions? Jerry?
Under the expenditures, the modular classrooms, I assume this is for modular classroom maintenance rather than acquisition, or both?
This is actually for payment of our modular leases payment.
Okay, and how many modular classrooms does this cover, do you know?
This covers all across 25 schools.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, Satish?
Yeah. So yeah, one question here is, can see the price keep increasing on this modular classrooms. Is it like, is it the same numbers, or we are having more stuff, or year after year it increases?
It's the same number of modulars, but we have to incorporate the CPI index for increase every year as an estimate.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Dorothy.
Thank you.
Next are discussion items, and 6.1 is updates on the strategic plan. So I don't know who that is. That you? Allison, good, all right.
Okay.
So we're at a very exciting time in our district where we're beginning our strategic planning process, and we're also reaching the 3rd year of our LCAP plan, so it's about to reset after next year. And we also are working with some new CIPSA templates, so it's a perfect time for us to come and talk to you about how all of these 3 plans are intersecting, tell you how we're gathering some community feedback along the way, and really finding our path in all 3 of those documents as they work together for continuous improvement in our district. So today, I wanted to just highlight what is the role of each of those documents, how is it going as we're gathering the community feedback, what are some of the themes that we're seeing popping up, and see if you have any questions or a need for more information as we're continuing to go through the process this spring. So I think we're in such an exciting spot because sometimes in districts these kinds of plans can be paperwork. So they can be just separate systems that really don't impact what's happening in really powerful ways. But here in our district, we're at this place of opportunity where the 3 plans are intersecting and we're working towards synergy between these 3 processes so that we can really drive forward towards our vision of what we want for the kids. So with our strategic plan, we're going through this process right now to set the course, that long-range plan, so it's that big 5 years or more set of commitments, our promise to our kids, what we're hoping for in our portrait of a graduate, and what we're setting up as our promise that we're making to our kids. And then our LCAP is the district 3-year improvement plan. So we update it annually, but it stretches out across 3 years, helping us look at the steps that we anticipate taking, and then we make adjustments each year along the way. And then the CIPSA is the annual plan that's submitted by each school site. So all 3 of those plans they're continuous processes, and we want them to be aligned so that we can see how we're taking steps towards that bigger vision. So this is really our year of starting that alignment process. It's going to, we're going to have some great steps forward this year, and then as we get our strategic plan into place, we'll get tighter and tighter alignment between the processes as we get clarity on that bigger vision.
Can you remind us what CIPSA letters stand for?
Yes, Single Plan for Student Achievement.
Thank you.
Yeah, and LCAP is Local Control Accountability Plan. So, yeah. And really, they're all basically the same kind of cycle. We are in that mode of annual update as kind of in the beginning part of the year where we're saying, how did it go? Where are we now? And then as we go throughout the year, we're monitoring progress, checking on how things are going, and then getting into that goal-setting cycle for the next year. So we're really heading into that goal-setting cycle right now. The spring of the year before is that time where we're really setting the course for what's ahead. And then, you know, as we're going into the next year, it kind of keeps going. Sometimes we make adjustments to those plans, so they're never static. We always want to be reflecting on how is it going? Are we needing to make adjustments along the way based on feedback and what we're noticing in terms of the kids' needs or needs of the staff? So it's really a continuous cycle, and it's really ongoing. So throughout the year, we have stakeholder input sessions, and this is happening across all 3 of the plans right now. We're having our town halls and our department meetings and lots of conversations with the principals and our steering committee for strategic planning, and our focus groups, all of our focus and flares that we've been bringing to you. And in our LCAP sessions, this is one of those places where we're already seeing lots of alignment because the themes that are coming up in our CIPSA conversations at the sites, our LCAP conversations throughout the year, and our strategic planning conversations, town halls, and these other pieces are really intersecting already. We're able to see a lot of common themes that are coming up across those conversations. So I think this is one of the most exciting parts of the work because we get to really touch base with different aspects of our organization and hear what's important to them. And we're seeing, just like we've reported in the strategic planning conversations, just a lot of alignment around what we feel is important for our system in support of our kids. So we have been bringing updates to you along the way on these pieces, and we wanted to share this process with you because we know that we're going to be heading into the spring season where we'll be bringing drafts to you. And so we want to be sure that you're getting the information that you need along the way about how the process works, and especially with SIPSAs, because we know that we're going to have lots and lots of documents with all the different schools. So we want to encourage you to reach out to your assigned schools and connect with the principal and find out how this process is going at the school site, and learn a little more about those schools' plans to give you a sense of how the plans are set up, how it's working at the school sites, how those conversations are happening, and how they're determining their focus areas for the school site. And that way, when we get to that spring approval moment where we have lots and lots of pages, we're hoping that you'll feel a sense of understanding and really feel a part of the process in that way, because we know it's going to be a lot of pages when we get to the spring. So we know our strategic plan. We're hoping to have a draft this spring or into fall maybe, and we'll be bringing the approval of the LCAP and SIPSAs this spring, because those are annual events that we know we're required to bring those annually. Over time, we're hoping we'll be able to highlight some of these opportunities that are showing up in SIPSA throughout the school year, give you a glimpse of it so it's not all saved for the end. So we're working on that, and knowing that we're in this moment of transition where we're getting things aligned, and we're going to have more opportunities to show that alignment as we work towards that in the future. So this is our timeline for strategic planning. Leslie and I will be bringing an update soon. We're into that final focus flare stage of this spring, and again, we're seeing just a lot of common themes that are popping up across the conversations. Some of the things that are emerging as themes across all of the different conversations are the idea that we need to be keeping in mind that one size doesn't fit all. And this is something that we're hearing from our kids, our teachers, our parents, just that idea of the importance of MTSS and interventions, things like how technology can support a personalized approach to learning, all of our work in STEAM and project-based learning, math workshop, lots of different areas there. And the importance of integrating across core areas, that integration gives kids an opportunity to go deeper with their understanding and find meaning in their learning. The other thing that's really popping up in the conversations is that we have had a strong commitment to educating the whole child, and that really remains a cornerstone for the whole community, that we know we're committed to academic excellence, but also equally committed to making sure our kids are healthy and well and are learning social emotional skills and can go out into the world feeling competent and confident and connected to others. And then the collaboration piece also. Our teachers are doing such strong work all around the district, and I often hear them talking about how much they value working with each other, opportunities to connect with each other through professional development or thinking about instructional strategies. So I know that that will be a strong piece as we think about our plans as well. And then parents too. Parents want to be our active partners, and they want to have opportunities to learn what their kids are learning in class and how they can support their children at home. So I know that that also will be a strong piece as we bring the plans forward. Okay.
Okay, any questions from the board? Satish, go ahead. Then Lori.
Okay. So I have one question on SPSA. So I think I heard that it's individualized. It's for each site.
Yes.
So how it is being brought as is it like a completely independent of each other, or is it like
Yes.
you converge somewhere, some point between the schools and in a more in the school district level?
Right. So there's a separate template for each school, but it's the same common template that we use. And we've been having SIPSA sessions with the principals. So we've been working with them in small groups on what their school site focus areas are and how those pieces connect to district focus areas. So we've been doing our SIPSA support sessions around budget planning and setting goals and analyzing data to target needs. And also, our directors have a set of 5 schools that they're matched with as a support person. So our next step, as they're getting into kind of that final writing stage, is for our directors to do the one-on-one with each principal and talk through, okay, how is it coming together, and what else might they need as they prepare to finalize the plan. So it's been really fun to hear their thinking, because it's giving them an opportunity to share some strategies too as they work in those smaller groups to get their plan put into place.
I'll wait for the
Come back to you later.
Yeah,
Okay,
next
Lori.
question. Yeah.
So I know, I guess the slide on stakeholder input. I know that that absolutely are at our staff level, our directors at the strategic plan level, our special ed advisory, and in our LCAP, and certainly in our teams at our sites, in our site meetings. But I guess, where do I want to go with this? I guess, do we or can we have members of our special education community represented in, like, say, PAC-DLAC, so that there's an input into the LCAP there, or maybe we can tailor our surveys with input to maybe meet the needs of our special education community. I guess I'm not seeing that specifically called out here in our purple, and it may very well exist, and I didn't. I guess I haven't stopped to consider that before now, and
I think that's great feedback, and we have been talking about doing a survey of parents in special education to help us with the goal setting, just to get a sense of that. So I think it's great. I know we have parents of special education students, in the different groups that we're definitely touching base with, but I also appreciate that comment.
And we do have parents that represent for us on SELPA, right? In our SELPA? Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So that's one input point, but maybe then into LCAP and strategic plan specifically to make sure we have good coverage there too as we move through this process. That's great.
Great.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Great.
Back to Satish. Oh, Jerry.
I think Sylvia probably has one also. I'll ask a quick one on this slide. Just in terms of the student focus groups, can you talk a bit about your plans for what have we been doing or will be doing in terms of how do we select the students to participate in these focus groups?
Yeah, so we have been doing that as the need has come up, so in different ways this year. So one was as part of the math process, so wanting to get some student input about math learning. And the other one was as part of our strategic planning process. We asked the kids what they wished we knew about how we could make school more meaningful. And in both cases, we work with the principal to help us get a diverse group of students and make sure that parents are notified before we are doing that. But really, we rely on the site level to help us pull together that group of students.
So generally, do you think the call goes out to all students, or is it more on a site-per-site basis? They might identify a certain set, to your understanding?
Yeah, I don't think they're advertising it generally to the whole school, but they're selecting from what they know about their students. And yeah, we do, the checks piece is a student survey. And that does go to all the kids who have permission to take the survey in 5th grade and 7th grade, but the focus groups are a smaller selected group.
So I get just something to consider. I think we've talked about wanting to encourage civic engagement in our graduates. So I understand with, 17,000, 16,000 kids and, it's maybe hard to reach everyone, but there's a way to sort of invite everybody to see if they want to give input on the district strategic plan as opposed to having a selected set. Because I think ideally you like to get everybody's input. It's just logistically, it's hard to scale to that. So I guess I'm expressing a wish here, and whether or not it's feasible, I'll leave it up to the district to see if we could do that. Just be as inclusive as possible.
Thank
right?
you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'll hold my question. Sylvia.
So I guess first a comment. I was able to attend the steering committee meeting last week, and I thought it was really great to see kind of an integration of not just the teachers and the principals, but also like some of the staff, like the SITS coordinator and like secretaries and parents. It did surprise me that there were not as many parents there as I would have assumed there would have been. So I'm wondering if there's maybe any move to incorporate a couple more parents, or how those parents specifically were chosen or selected.
Yes. I'm going to have to defer to Leslie on that question about how the parents were selected, since we're working together on that. But I also just want to say that in the survey part, we have received responses from, I think we're up to maybe 600 parents. Right. Yes. So the steering committee is our touchstone group, but in terms of participation, in the survey alone, we have had hundreds, and then in the meetings, many more when we think about the site meetings and the town halls too.
And so what happened at the first flare at the school sites, the principals asked at those meetings if there were individuals that were interested in being part of the steering committee. And so they volunteered. I believe there was an email that also went out, but I'd have to double check that. There were quite a few parents that were absent that night also. So what you can do is if you go onto the district website, go under strategic planning, it actually has a list in our representation of everyone that is part of it. And I think it labels whether or not they're a parent or a community member at large or a staff member. In addition to that, just so as we're on this topic, for those of you that weren't at the meeting where Sylvia was, all of the information after the meeting, the slides and the notes are uploaded so that you can peruse that also. But it's pretty balanced. Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I can have, yeah, I thought you have one. So mine is simple one. So is it like, you said there is an intersection between these three, right? Is it a hierarchical level of it, or is it what is feeding what, kind of like, is it strategic plan drives all these things, or vice versa? It's in the other direction.
Right. So once we have our strategic plan in place, then that will be our driver, because everything is helping us take steps towards achieving the vision that's in the strategic plan. This year, we're in a more organic process because we're building the strategic plan, and so it's sort of there's a synergy between the conversations, themes that we are seeing showing up across all three. This year, we will be drafting the strategic plan, bringing you the draft, and we also will need to complete the LCAP and the SIPSAs before we're fully done with the strategic plan. So we definitely see that we're in the third year of LCAP, so it's kind of making some revisions to the 3-year plan, not redoing the entire plan, but making revisions that are in line with what we're hearing. So, for example, looking at the fact that social emotional learning and health and wellness are coming up, what might we see as shifts in that area of the plan without redoing the whole plan. So we'll make adjustments to the actions and the budget pieces of the LCAP. In the SIPSAs, those do change every year, so it's how is the site taking steps towards those focus areas that are captured in the LCAP. Everybody isn't working on everything, so schools will be choosing areas of focus from the district set of focus areas, because we know we can't do it all at the same time, right? We're often phasing in new things, and we want to encourage schools to use their SIPSA process as a way to determine the focus area based on the needs. So we are the strategic plan will be the driver. Right now, I would say it's an influencer in the conversation because it is helping us lift out all those conversations that are part of building the strategic plan, and it's helping us lift out what is most important to the community because we have a very high level of parent engagement this year in conversations around what's most important to the district about what we're trying to do for our kids. So that conversation is just happening in all these different forums. So I feel like even more than a traditional LCAP process, we're in a better place to make those minor shifts while we're waiting for that big picture piece to be put in place because we're hearing so much feedback about what's important to people.
Craig, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we all had the context that the 5 priorities that the board made were purposely done to take the place of strategic planning while we were building the strategic plan. So it's not the same, but the driver has been those 5 priorities. You know, keen focus on is teaching and learning, the balance the budget, balance enrollment, communications. Those things that we set forth are serving, in a sense, as a substitute. We did that on purpose, which is why we said, but let's have a draft and then a strategic plan by next year so that we're not just working off of short-term priorities, but more on that long range. So I just want to make sure you all knew that history.
Lori and Jerry, did you have something too? Okay, Lori and then Jerry. No, I'll go last. I'm good.
Okay. So the LCAP is very much driven by identifying our needs, but also within the range of the money we know we're getting for it, right? And so it's a balancing act between those two things. Always. Yes. The strategic plan is more of our aspirations, our hopes, our dreams, our vision.
Yes.
We will prioritize our budget off of that, but it's not necessarily being driven by a specific pot of money available. So is there, in this hierarchy, if the strategic plan becomes the one that is the vision, does the funding within the LCAP then become part of the prioritization that we're going through anyway? Is that eventually the long-term goal there?
Yes. Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that for all school districts, since none of us is flush, our real priority document is the budget, because that's the one where we say, yes, these are our aspirations and hopes. And now what do we have, and therefore how are we going to prioritize it to actually achieve that? Yeah.
So the LCAP will capture what we think are high leverage actions, our next steps towards the bigger goal. And then the same thing with SIPSA, the school-based actions towards the bigger goal.
All right. If you could go to the slide on the emerging themes. I have a couple of questions and comments, and I'll just pick one here. So when I'm looking at these 3, I agree with them, these things you have highlighted in blue, but they sort of feel like activities to me rather than objectives, right? So we're not going to do personalized learning in and of itself. We're doing it because we want a more creative child, we want self-driven, et cetera, et cetera. So I would, I guess, maybe challenge the team to think a bit more, because as I look at this whole child, I can see it being an objective. The rest of these feel like activities to get to some end goal. So you might want to think about, I don't know if you have any comments, but just thinking about putting in some of the end goals. Now, what are we trying to do with personalized learning as opposed to personalized learning being a theme itself? Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. So within the LCAP, there are bigger goals, and those will remain throughout the 3 years. So maintaining a focus on academic learning and the whole child is kind of that broader base goal. And then, exactly right, these themes I think will show up in our actions. And then the plan also has, we have to identify expected outcomes, measures and expected outcomes, baseline, and then what we hope. So, yes.
Right. So I think if we expected outcomes and such, I think I'm just trying to figure out what the end goal is, because these feel like activities to get to the goal.
Right, and but these are broad themes that are emerging from conversation. The job is to convert all that into a strategic plan that paints a strong vision, et cetera. The LCAP is going to have very specific goals with measures, dollars attached to them for the entire district. And the SIPSA, similarly, will get to activities to get to those goals. Right? That's the alignment of all these. But you're not looking at that document. They're just saying that from the conversations we've had to date, there are some kind of big picture, broad, emerging themes, not goals or objectives.
Okay.
Yet.
All right.
Yet.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll go ahead and pass to the next person. Wait for my turn.
One more.
Okay, go ahead.
So, sorry to have you keep flipping back and forth. If you could go back to the stakeholder input slide. You were saying earlier that each of the sites might do it a little bit differently because depending on, you can't do them all. I was just curious if you could expand a little bit more on how that's going to maybe be rolled out and how much flexibility or authority the principal will have to determine what's going to be implemented or executed at their site. And I'm also curious, how do the alternative schools fit into that as well, because they already have certain philosophies that are in place.
So are you asking what the stakeholder feedback looks like and then what flexibility they have in their in determining what goes into their plan? I thought I heard you asking about the stakeholder piece at the beginning. I'll start with
I was asking more about, maybe it's not related to this slide, maybe the slide was up when you were talking about it.
Okay, yeah.
But you had said that when it's going to be rolled out, that each school will do it a little bit differently.
Plan itself.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, and that's that synergy piece. I think it really comes to life in those moments because together with the principals, we're setting the course for the LCAP. So kind of what are those district priorities? But then there are those moments where the school site has to decide, of these many things that we're doing as a district, what is their next step? So for example, as we hopefully prepare for our implementing reading in elementary school next year, some schools will be ready to take that on next year, just given the work that they've done, and some schools it may be the year after. So they will have choices in things like timing when we're phasing in new curriculum, as well as just within the different categories. We know that we want to support all schools in developing a positive school climate. So we've seen some presentations on that, but the way they're going about it varies. So different systems approaches to the overall focus area. So we want them to have a lot of flexibility to listen to their community and work with their staff. And that idea of site-based leadership and really knowing what is important to the community and what the next step is for moving the work forward is really lives at that site level, but we're working together as a district leadership team to keep the big picture in mind where we as a team say we're heading for our kids, what our focus areas are, what those themes are that we know are important to our community. So it's that team process that we're navigating, and I think the schools really have a strong sense of where they want to head next, and we're getting into those moments now where they're going to be formulating their goals. Mm-hmm.
Okay, anybody else before we go back to Jerry? All right, Jerry?
If we could go back to the other slide on the emerging themes. So, earlier in your presentation, you talked about our district, right, traditionally, and I think we'll continue to have a commitment to academic excellence, and at the same time, we want to develop the whole child through social emotional learning and all that. So I see whole child on there, and I didn't see academic excellence on there, and is that because it's during the discussions it didn't really emerge as a theme, or it's in one of these themes, or it's Cupertino, so we don't need to talk about that, it's just kind of inherent in what we do? I just wanted to sort of comment in
all of that.
Yeah. So I was just curious in what you've gotten from the discussion groups, where's academic excellence sort of relative to these themes?
Yeah. So. I mean, definitely I hear that that's a cornerstone. That's part of the core of what we're about, and we want to continue to foster that. I think for me, listening to all the different conversations and trying to look for those themes, one place that I see that coming up is just the many conversations about the uniqueness of each learner and really understanding what what excellence means for each child. You know, so that idea of personalizing and using our data to understand strengths and needs for each learner really is trying to get at what does each child need in order to learn and grow and thrive. Also the idea of integrating. I mean, time is short in the school day, and I know this is something our teachers are wondering about too. As we, begin to bring in new curriculums, how will we find time in the day? How can we look for those opportunities to really feel like we're using that time in meaningful ways and help kids see connections across the different core areas? So that is something that's come up, that we can sometimes get to deeper learning, which is also part of academic excellence, through integration and not sending the message that we need to think about things in separate buckets, but allowing teachers flexibility to look for those opportunities for integration.
Thank you.
No, I think that's pretty much what I was going to say. Yeah.
So I have just a couple of things, and one of them is actually a question for Jerry, and I want to double check if I heard you correctly, Allison. Jerry, you commented about more student participation and involvement in the process, and I'm wondering, I thought I heard Allison say that one of the things they're doing is surveys with the kids. So my question is to Jerry, do the surveys do it for you, or are you looking more for more focus groups, more conversations with kids?
I think surveys would be fine. I think what I'm looking for is to have everybody having a voice in it somehow, right? And so I missed the part about the survey, so if that was there, that's fine.
Well, let's check with Allison. Did I hear correctly, Allison?
So we don't do the checks at every school every year, so it would not be accurate to think that we were surveying all the kids this year. So we could look at that piece. We're actually right now in the process of consolidating the student feedback that we learned from the focus groups, so we could talk about if there was a way to kind of test that, what we captured in the focus groups, with more kids in some way. So we can think about that. It's a great challenge.
And I do, what I latched onto, and I agree with Jerry on that, just from a research perspective, if you're doing a focus group, we would be a little broader and not hand select kids per se. You might do it in addition to having leadership classes or something where it's known that if you are on the leadership team, you will be providing that input. But it's a little different from random selection and saying, we're going to just pull out out of a hat, 20 names from each school or something. Then you're okay doing a focus group, as opposed to getting a select group of kids who are always the ones giving you feedback. So I do hear, I think that's a part of what you're saying.
Right, and I think part of it is just feeling a sort of a sense of ownership, because when I have kids and they come over for play dates, and I've talked to them about strategic plan and how we'll want to get inputs from everyone, and some of their inputs are a little bit silly, or not silly, but I think one you might expect from a fifth grader, which is different than an adult. But I think many of them are excited at the fact that the district is interested enough to just kind of ask for them so they can actually say something. And so I think that's what I was looking for. Not so much for us to do a polling to try to get a sense for where the students are, but just kind of participation and just, yeah. Does that make sense? Okay, thanks.
Okay. And then my other question is about SIPSA. We've talked for the last couple of meetings about the safety plans, and there's some changes this year, and I know that schools are going to be. So does that safety plan part of SIPSA, or is it a totally separate plan?
It's a separate plan, but I think about the safety plan as kind of a subset of SIPSA, because when they set their school climate goals, I think we're going to see a lot of overlap, because one of the big changes of the safety plan was having a school climate piece, not just the operational piece. So I think we're going to see overlap, and I think it's another piece of the alignment that we're working towards with all the new adjustments, but definitely I would expect to see overlap in that area. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the board? Okay, we have one comment from the public. Sunil? Yep, up there. Yeah. Into the mic, please, so the whole world can hear you.
Yes, very interesting. Thank you. So, thank you for the presentation. It was great, and I appreciate the board members' question and discussions on this stuff. I have a few questions for you on this topic, right? So, my apologies, I don't have detail on this one, so based on the presentation, I'm just going to ask the question, if you're okay with that.
The question is to the board.
Yeah, sure. So, my question was that can I Can I go back to one slide here, if you don't mind?
There you go.
Okay, so stakeholder input, my question to you is that what's the weight of parents, students, and staff in this input? Because I, as a parent, have never got any such question, a survey, or a comment to provide input into strategic plan. So my question is, how is this being done? The survey, I think I heard a little bit about it, but it's not broad and selective groups. How do you select the groups? How do you kind of put a weight? Students are students, like the comment came from the board, is that fifth grader will not give you the comment what they want to learn. The parents have a lot more to say in the elementary school setting. So what's the weight the parents have, and how do you survey it out? And how does this whole thing come back? Because I get a flyer to fund the school district very frequently, consistently, clearly. Never get anything like this. What is the strategic plan for the district? What is the plan input we want from you? And these are the sessions that are available for you to participate. I have not heard those. It's maybe a statement here, but at the same time, my question is, what's the plan to get that involvement from parents?
So, Allison, do you want to respond now to that, or would you rather talk with Sunil offline?
Not just me, I'm talking about broader parents, especially thank you, Lorraine, for bringing in the special needs child, because as a special needs parents, I can vouch for that. None of us have heard anything like this before. So I would like to hear more in general public, and actually definitely want to talk to you offline, but any comments you can share with us would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'll just make it brief, and then we can talk details later, because I know we've had more focused presentations on the strategic planning process, but we actually have been going out and having town hall conversations. We've invited the community. We've had numerous, different email blasts inviting people to come to the conversations, inviting interest in all of the different opportunities, and then we've been testing that feedback through things like surveys that have been sent out to the whole community. So we've really prioritized trying to connect with as many people as possible, and we can go through in detail more about that, but we're in the process of really each time we're calling it focus and flare, so we're flaring out as much as possible, getting as much input, and then we bring it back to our steering committee and to the board for the next phase, and trying to really listen and reflect back what we're hearing, and trying to have opportunities in person and also electronically so that people can choose the forum that works best for them. And we definitely don't want anybody to feel left out or like they're missing information, so we'll follow up for sure. Thank you.
So, Sunil, I would encourage you to do two things. One would be to meet with Allison, and the second one would be to watch for the next flare, because there's going to be one more, right? And you should get an email blast.
I did not get anything, so I'm not sure if there's anything I have to sign up, or what's the process?
Okay, well, that's Jeff.
Well, Leslie.
Yeah.
But I don't think this is the time or place. But we are hearing that there's questioning about how that's getting out. Given that we're going on our third flare, we have received more than 600 parents have been involved. So something's going out, but we have to make sure that everybody's getting it. So if in fact there is a miss, then we need to look into that. So we can do that.
It's not on the agenda, yeah. So we'll work. We just want to make sure that people are getting the information. To meet with Allison and attend one of the flares. There'll probably be 4 or 5 this spring. Yeah. So I think those two things would be helpful for you and for us.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. So let me see where we are now. We are at math. 6.2, placement in mathematics courses, second read, and this is regarding the policy. We're not going to get into the nitty-gritty. We need to establish policy for them to continue forward with.
But we will get into the nitty-gritty of the policy.
Right.
And so our goal is to actually walk through the policy that you have. It's on a couple pages, right? And for us to make sure it's starting to reflect all the pieces that you want to have. You'll notice that we're giving a new version. We posted one. Make sure if you're looking online, pull out the one that says second revision, I think. because based on a lot of your comments and notes that you sent to us, we then went back and did one more round today to try to put in those comments. So you'll see the red highlights are the changes that you already saw that we can talk about, but you'll also see interweaved within them some, I think hot pink, is it? Or did you change it?
Purple.
It's purple.
Purplish color that are last minute ones. But I thought if we just went each section and just talked about the changes, we don't have to read it together, but just say, is there anything there that you want to comment on, and then we'll talk one by one.
Is what we have here with the red and purple the same as the second revision that's now added into the board docs?
No, the second revision added should have a few added comments, but it's only adding to the one that you already saw.
Right, but is it more than what's here in paper, or is the paper the same
Oh,
as
no,
the
the paper's
second
the same,
revision?
right? No, the paper's the same. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Wait, no, the paper is the latest, so what's online is right.
Yeah, well, but it's both online for public, so everybody can see it, and it's the paper one. Though the second revision is that one that you have in paper right now.
Okay, so for those watching at home, pull up the one that says second revision board policy, and for us, it's this. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Allison and Marie.
Okay, thank you. So we're excited to work with you to make progress towards adopting a new policy, and we know that we're trying to really set the course with that aspirational visionary language that will help guide our next steps, knowing that our work in this area will take time, that we're not going to be in full implementation mode right away, that we're going to be going into a learning year. But having a policy will help guide our next steps and really set the course. So we're going to take a look at how our policy is aligning and consider both our current students currently in the current pathways and future students. So when we met last, you gave some feedback, and we heard you saying that we needed to get some more clarity on the terms of flexibility and choice and get clear on what those mean to us, that it would be important to have clear, fair, and consistent language that would be supportive at the site level, and to really clarify what this will mean when we say grandfathering for kids currently in the system. We know it's really important to work with our parents all along the way, not just in middle school, but to help parents see the learning progression all the way through the grades and how they can partner with us to support student progress. And also that our teachers need time to learn together. And we need to be developing our professional development plan with their input so that we can take our steps together. And also to consider the timing and the pace, that different parts of this process will be happening at different times. Some will be potentially immediate shifts, and then there will be some that will take a longer time as we work with our teachers to learn and grow together.
So I want to talk a little bit about those, the timing of the proposed shifts, and once again, Happy Pi Day with our math presentation. So the proposed immediate shifts are happening right now. You know, the first piece is that we would really like to approve the board policy, because then that sets into motion many things. The administrative regulations that we have been posting, the drafts that we've been tweaking and changing, would begin with 6th grade, incoming 6th grade, not current 6th grade. The changes that we're also proposing for 6th grade acceleration would start next year, and that would be that shift from Math 6-7 to a changed course progression, a changed scope and sequence for Math 6+. And then also, in addition to that, we would want to, in the immediacy, have changes to the placement procedures for our incoming 6th graders. And all of those are listed with more specificity in the administrative regulations. And then right away, we want to start to work on the professional development support that we would offer to our teachers and the resources to really support them. Presently, we are trying out some strategies, and you know, we have such amazing teachers. I've been in classrooms all week seeing the implementation of just different strategies that teachers are trying out, and they're incredible. So we want to capitalize on the brilliance of our teachers and be able to start to pull these ideas together. That's going to be really important. And then also, as soon as we have the board approval of the board policy, we want to launch into communication plans with our community. So that's going to be really important. I know that our teachers and our principals are waiting for that next step because they are getting lots of emails and questions. So that's all in the immediate. As we look towards the longer range, we really want to make sure that we are thoughtful in the development of our model. We're talking a lot about Math Workshop being sort of the overarching approach that we can fit personalizing learning into. And that's something that we're going to work on and develop together. And so with that, we also need to really honor the learning process of our teachers. They need time to explore and to learn and to take risks, try something out. Maybe it flops and they learn from that. They need to collaborate and talk with each other about what's going on, because that's where real change happens, when teachers aren't afraid to take risks and try out new things. And we also want to make sure that we are providing them the resources and time to do that properly. It's just absolutely essential. The question about personalizing, we really need to take time to think this through of how we're going to do this. Again, we're thinking a lot about Math Workshop. We have experts now in the district who have been trained. We have about one at every site who is a math lab host, and they invite teachers in to see them in practice. Not everybody is at that place of inviting in, because there's some that are still learning this year, but we've invested a lot in teachers to develop those skills in Math Workshop, and it's extraordinary to see. The learning that's taking place is really wonderful. So we want to grow that. And we also just want to make sure that we have a comprehensive parent education plan that starts with TK and moves all the way to 8th grade. That's more of that long range plan that we need to really focus on, and it will continue throughout. So 2 different areas that we're looking at: immediate, long range. Both are absolutely needed. Okay, so the last thing that we want to land on is just really taking time to look at the board policy and the administrative regulations. So we're going to shift over and look at those. I know that you have the latest version, which is great, and we can put it up here so that we can see. We want to make sure that we're hitting that visionary language that you were talking about in the last board meeting. Is there alignment between the proposed shifts and the board policy? Is it clear about how we're going to grandfather in this policy over time? And if it's unclear, what's unclear? Like, let us know. I know that you've been wonderful about sharing with us ideas, and we've been trying to change it as quickly as possible, but there might be something that comes up while we are looking through this that we need to address. This is important work. So I think that's it. Am I missing?
I think so.
Okay, so we are going to shift over.
So while they're doing that, I
Yes.
want to try to, while you're putting that up, go ahead and do that. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So that said policy and AR. but I want to make sure that, we're providing the AR so that you see it and how that would or would not support the board policy. But I want to make sure our conversation is really about the policy, because we can come back with the AR and talk more about that. And it's okay to, I want you to reflect on it at least and say, I'm not seeing the parity, or there's a contradiction between this statement here and there. But the work we need to do tonight is on the board policy itself, because we want to have that in place, because that is what drives the AR. And if we keep going at both of them, we're never going to get this done. So if we can really focus on board policy as much as possible, that would be great. Okay.
So are you looking for input tonight, or are we taking action tonight?
No, just input.
Just input.
Yeah, this is just a second read, and I wouldn't be surprised we don't do a third read before we come back for any kind of decision. So we're going to work our way through it here. Yeah.
So we saw this last time and gave input. Now we're seeing another revised. So more conversation tonight, more discussion. Satish, you had something?
Can we have a clarification question here?
Anything.
No?
You can have anything you want.
So, okay, no,
this is a discussion item. So.
Okay. So I think longer range, right? Plans we put it. So what does it mean? Like, is it like a time-based stuff, or is it like an open-ended little bit?
So some of it is immediate, like within weeks after the board policy is approved. But the longer range, we're gonna have next year. We need to really be working with teachers to develop, to do professional development. So that's gonna take some time. That changes like that don't happen right away. The communication plan, we're hoping that we would start in the fall and continue throughout. So that's more of a long-range plan. It's not weeks.
Yeah. And this is something that will show up when you see the plans later this spring, like our LCAP plan. We'll highlight this as one of the actions, so you'll be able to see a little more clearly.
Bound?
Yeah.
Kind of. Okay.
Anticipate this is the kind of thing that takes more than one school year too. So each year we have to monitor how it's going along the way, make adjustments, and it'll be ongoing.
Any other questions, comments about math? Lori, I see some thinking going on here.
So I would be remiss if I didn't start out by acknowledging like how far this has come. This is amazing, and thank you so much to the team for all of your work on this. I think I'm trying to kind of frame this in my head around the presentation we just heard about the strategic plan and around the themes that are emerging out of that. And so like the personalized piece and integrating learning is in here, and I know we're saying there's a difference between a tool, those things as a tool versus those things as an objective, but I think one of the ways it becomes objective is when we see it play out in a policy like this, because it's helping us to then meet the needs of the whole child and the social emotional learning. We have the collaboration piece and the professional development and partnering with parents in here. So I think at a very high level, I'm really comfortable with where this is going at this point, and I think you've captured my feedback. So I think, and I know I've given a lot of feedback, and thank you for being so open to incorporating that. So, yeah, I guess that would be where I would be at.
And just to check, understanding here, a part of what I hear you saying, that what you raise is the things that really need to get clarified. Those do sound to me like AR-related things that we would come back with to more clearly define what that actually looks like in action and how we bring it about.
All of my concerns that I have left at this point are entirely procedural, and I think that's the ARs. So I think as a policy, like, I'm good to go here. And I think for me, you've gotten there for me on the policy.
Jerry, anything?
Just a couple of comments, I guess. So I want to thank y'all for, I sent in my comments really late, I think like middle of the day today. Wasn't expecting for it to get turned around so quickly. I appreciate you doing that. Apologies for dragging it out for so late. Usually I don't like to do that. I know it kind of puts stress on everybody. I think at this point I'm actually pretty happy with the board policy. I think there's a couple of grammatical things that I can communicate offline. We don't need to do that here. I think the thing I wanted to highlight is that second paragraph, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page here. I'm talking about where it says the board values a strong relationship with parents, and there's a couple of items there about how the district can support parents, right? But I think a strong partnership to me is sort of bilateral, right? And so I appreciate adding the language for valuing parent input. I think that's a big part of it. So I just wanted to kind of acknowledge that for adding that in there. I want to make sure that's the intent of that language, is that it's really it's not so much, you know, we've got all these things and you're gonna, you parents, we're gonna educate you on how these things are, but there is a feedback loop, policy-wise for the parents to be able to have a say, and I see that in there. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah, and I think in board policy parlance, that sentence about the board values input, I think we would probably want to shift it to something a little more direct, like, because we already say we value strong partnership, et cetera. It should be something more like the superintendent and or his or her designee therefore will ensure that parent input is considered when doing blah blah, something like that. So we didn't do language with it because
it was last minute.
Yeah, so we put it in there. But I think we would do something like that to make it more definitive about what it means to have this partnership with parents, and that will then also drive a lot of our ARs in terms of therefore what are we going to do?
Thank you. Exactly, that's what I was thinking. Thank you, Craig.
Can I ask a clarifying question about what Jerry just asked? Is that okay? So are you, when you're saying input, are you envisioning that though as a determinant of placement, or is that still just a piece
It would definitely be a piece. I think at the end of the day, it's very clear here, right? The principal and I guess a superintendent at the end of the day.
If the data is still making the case that there's a different placement that is the most healthy place for a child to be, parent input is one piece of that, but it's not going to be true.
I'm not advocating parent override of data, if that's what you're saying. It was just that, you know, in that big side, we're setting policy here, right? And so for me, when I read that, I saw three sort of instances or examples of a strong partnership, right? Supporting parents in understanding this, da-da-da-da-da-da. I didn't see sort of any verbiage about the other way, right? What's the other side of that partnership look like? So,
okay, thank you. Yeah, that helps.
Right.
Sylvia, did you have anything?
Just can I question follow up on
sure,
that?
Of course.
Wow.
So, like, I'm definitely in concurrence with you in terms of we want that feedback loop, because in the end, the parent is the one that knows the child best and is going to be obviously the strongest advocate for their child. So is there a way to maybe place it into the policy, like you were saying, the superintendent and designees can, but that, because I know that we've said that the things that we're taking into consideration right now are the 3 tests and teacher recommendation, right? This is in the last meeting.
There is a parent input.
There is a parent input piece in that one as well.
Here.
Yeah.
Perfect. Student and parent interest. Okay. Okay, great. And then just in general, my comment is I'm similar to Lori. I think my questions have more to do with the AR than with the policy, and I agree. I really like the changes that have been made between last meeting and this meeting, so I think it's definitely on its way.
Can I ask you a question, Sally?
Yeah.
Is that all right? I'm just remembering that when you and I have talked about this, for you, one of the things you raised is whether we're being clear enough about flexibility.
Yeah.
And did we capture that here? Because that's a really core thing that will drive our ARs, the degree to which we are saying that the ability for for us to be flexible about when students show mastery and they should be moving, et cetera, that we will provide, you know, that kind of personalized learning notion of things. Have we captured that, I guess? Because I'm not sure we did. I was just rereading it. I don't know if we have that.
Is that Is that policy or is that AR?
So here's my thought on that, is that you want the policy to drive everything. And so you would not get into the detail of what that means, like what do we mean by flexibility, because that's for us to figure out. But if you don't say that, a tenet that we have for these, our policy is that we believe it's important to build flexibility into the courses such that students are showing mastery and are moving at a pace that blah 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 or something like that. And I don't know if I missed it, but I'm just wondering.
So
and again, I wouldn't say more than that sentence. I'm just saying you have to have something that states it. Otherwise, we don't have the high level thing that drives us. Yeah.
Paragraph 3 references a revisited year to year. So I guess the question would be: is there room to revisit mastery and flexibility more than year to year? So right. That's maybe a limiter.
Well, okay, it says, so what we do say here is that the math placement is intended to place students in the math course that challenges and supports them.
Which is great,
right?
yeah.
So that is there. But it doesn't speak to the notion of varying pace and the ability that it's important to be able to be flexible to meet the needs, therefore, of the students, as opposed to, okay, stay the course, keep doing what you're doing, right? So I don't know the right way to do it without getting too, like your point of, but is that an AR or is that, but something has to be there that guides us to build the AR toward that.
Yeah, so I don't know if that is too detailed to put in a policy, but I think ideally what I would want to see is there's some flexibility or there's some, at least an opportunity for change, should change be required or necessary.
Something like that, okay.
Like.
Does that make sense to others too, that there's some statement like that in the policy?
Lori just had to address your comment about the year to year.
As long as we're not contradicting ourselves, right? So if we're gonna go that route in the policy, then maybe we need to line out our year to year, just because I don't know if you can do both. You see what I'm saying?
Right. So we need to make consistent that message and take a look at how we're framing here year to year versus the idea that, well, when we learn, because it could be multiple times during the year where we're checking mastery and we may have to provide flexibility. And we won't get that detailed, but ultimately that is the case, and we want to be able to adapt.
And I think that goes back to, though, it is going to be the balancing act with kind of this idea of the social emotional and the whole child, that disruptions to things like the master scheduling can be a very limiting factor at the middle schools, and if we're disrupting the rhythm or the math change necessitates changes in several other subjects, is that true to where that learner is at, and is that a good thing for them in the big picture?
Right, so that's the layer, exactly, but that's the layer of detail we wouldn't go to. But what it would do is say to us, is master scheduling, the way we do it, the best way to be able to provide the flexibility?
Fair question.
Right, because we should be driven by a vision, a policy that says this is what we believe is best for kids, part of which is one size does not fit all. And therefore, what does that mean you do? But if your system is set up such that everybody will move lockstep together, then you have an issue. And this is where it gets back to what's long range and short range. We are not shifting our master scheduling in the next year or so. That's not going to happen overnight. That is a long range thing for us to be talking about. But we can sure put a policy in place and then start working towards something that everybody sees, the professional development, thinking about master scheduling. What would it look like to have a schedule that actually supported that to happen? What do teachers really need to feel comfortable and okay with being able to move in this direction? So that's the long rangeness of it. But I want a policy that puts out a vision that's aspirational, that captures what we believe about good math instruction and placement in courses.
Would it be fair to then maybe say something, because I know that we talked about the different rates of development in the children is from 6th to 8th grade, and in the middle of 6th grade, one might all of a sudden they get it, in math. And is there a way to maybe thread that into the policy, saying understanding that children's development or something is.
I can guarantee they would be happy to put in something just like that, yes.
So, and given that, we want to cultivate an environment where families can then make changes that are appropriate to those rates of growth, or, you know?
And that exactly what you're hitting on goes both ways, because if the opposite is true, if the pace is too much for where they're at in their development, we also want to be able to move into support and challenge at the appropriate level. So it's both. Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Satish, did you have anything else?
No, nothing.
Jerry?
Yeah.
You're good? Okay, and from my perspective, I'm happy with the changes. I appreciate the discussion we just had about flexibility, and so thank you, good work. And we do have a public comment on this item, and that is Semele.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Semele Heller. I'm a parent in the district. I have a 4th grader at Montclair Elementary, and I have a 6th grader and an 8th grader at Cupertino Middle. So we have a lot of experience with children taking math in the Heller family. And I just want to start out by thanking you and thanking all of you for doing this, because my boys, my 6th graders and 8th graders are boys, and their experience with math has been profoundly different. It's been great for one and less than great for the other one. And a lot of the things that you're talking about are so important, I think, and would have been tremendously helpful to us when we were having a great deal of struggle in our family. The difference in communicating with parents, before it felt very much like this was just dropped on us and here you go, this is your placement, good luck with that. And that's not to say that the teachers were ever like that, but that's the overall feeling of getting that letter in the mail and this is how it is. So this openness and this communication and making it a two-way street and taking into account teacher input on placement, these are fabulous things, and I just want to thank you for all the work that you've done, because this is so important. And I'm delighted that my 4th grader will take advantage of all of your hard work. I want to call out the thing that Lori said right at the very end. We talk a lot, because we are Cupertino, about raising our children up when they're not placed high enough. I also very much want to request that all of you think about baking in the idea that if a child needs to step down to a lower math class, that we don't make them feel like a failure. Ask me why I say that, because I have experienced that in my household. And it's heartbreaking to see your child say, how come I'm not smart anymore, right? Because things aren't going well, and then feeling utterly like a failure at the idea of switching into the class that was really the place where he belonged. So please think about that when you're talking about flexibility and the ability to move, that it could be both ways. And it starts at the top with you all as the leaders of our district and with us as parents, making it clear to our children that this is okay. This doesn't mean that they're not smart, and it doesn't mean that they're not successful. It just means that sometimes we have to work a little bit to find the place where they belong. And everything you're doing supports all of that. I just wanted to mention it as a specific thing that's been a pain point for us. And I'm just going to close by saying what you commented on about encouraging our teachers and educating them and helping them not be afraid to take risks. We had a couple teachers who have all been great, I want to be super clear, but who clearly didn't feel like it was okay for them to send a message that wasn't entirely positive about our child's performance. And if they had felt more comfortable doing that earlier on, we could have saved all of us, ourselves, my child and the teachers and everybody, a lot of pain if that message had been communicated a little bit earlier. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Semele. Okay, moving on to, let me find my agenda here.
Just check with them and make sure they have what they need to.
Oh, yeah. Allison and Marie, do you need anything more from us?
I just want to make sure if you had any, because we want to make sure that we've collected all. Do you feel good with that, or did you have any questions for the board?
I think we captured the feedback, and we're eager to make the next revision and bring it back. Yeah, thank you.
Perfect.
Lots of notes.
Thank you. Thank you.
There were revisions to the ARs too. Do you want us to go off over the second draft of the ARs and give you feedback offline on that? Offline. Okay, all right.
Okay. So next we have Resolution 181915, approving a debt issuance and management policy.
Good evening, Board. One of the things that we wanted to do is, as you guys have approved the resolution for us to go out for our remaining series of dollars related to our bond. What that also forced us or allowed us to do is go back and look at the policies that we have in the district. We've had debt policies or debt issuance policies in the past. We have a bond oversight committee, so we are meeting the obligation that we should and really exceeding the obligation. But one of the recommendations that came back to us from our bond council was to do a more in-depth debt issuance and management policy as a district, including a resolution. And so what I'm bringing to you tonight is the articles as well as the resolution with the intention of bringing them back at the next board meeting for approval. Ideally, we'd like to get that approval prior to the receiving of our bond dollars, which should be around April 2nd. And so with that said, I'll take any questions that the board may have related to this.
We have we had two documents in our board policy to read for this. So Jerry, you had a question, go ahead.
Just a quick one. Who drafted the language for this? Was this done by staff? Was this done by outside counsel?
This was done by our bond counsel.
Bond counsel, okay.
Specifically, David Kazanoka was our attorney on this.
And do you know if this is sort of standard language, or is this something that was drafted for our district?
Very standard language with the addition of just the specific titles for our district were the only changes.
But otherwise, it's a standard language that's...
It is.
Okay, all right.
Anybody else have a question for Jeff? And we don't have any public comment on this item, so thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
So I have one procedural question.
Okay.
Is this something that could come back to on consent?
I think resolutions generally we try to do. We'll just make it an action item and probably do it real quick.
Okay.
This does actually need to be an action item for this one because of the articles as well as the policy.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. So next we have the update on human growth and development, recommendation for piloting materials. We have Allison again, and again, we'll do as we've done before. We'll hear the presentation, have a board discussion, and then we have a couple of public comments on this topic.
Okay, so I'm here to share with you the recommendation from our task force and some of the highlights, what we heard in our input sessions with the community. I want to just acknowledge that we have two of our task force members here, Galen and Semele. Thank you for being here in the audience. It's been really a wonderful process working with the task force and also hearing from the community about what's most important for this work. And we're here tonight to share our recommendation with you for your consideration. So we'll just review quickly our process and timeline and some of the things that we shared with you earlier just as a reminder. And then I'll share with you the recommendation and what we see as our next steps, and then we'll hear your comments and your questions and discussion. So just as a reminder, last spring, this work was set in motion as the board directed staff to select new instructional materials for 5th grade human growth and development. We have a relatively new 7th grade curriculum in place, and now we're setting about the task of updating the 5th grade materials. And we shared our process with the board in the fall, and since then we've been working with our task force and gathering input along the way. And now we're at that moment of making our recommendation, which would then be followed by a piloting stage. So our recommendation is not for a final choice, it's to move some of the options into the piloting stage, which means that we would be trying them out in the classrooms this spring with the goal of choosing one program for what we call adoption as our curriculum choice. So you may remember that we were looking at 3 options. We narrowed down the choices with our consultant's help, and we reviewed Puberty Talk by Health Connected, Positive Prevention Plus, which is the upper elementary version of our 7th grade curriculum, and then another program called Rights, Respect, and Responsibility. And we reviewed this at our last meeting, we were thinking about the California Healthy Youth Act that we've discussed, the legal aspects, but also we spent a lot of time thinking about what would be a fit for our community and our kids, and considering what's in place in other districts and some of the other pieces that would be relevant to our implementation here in CUSD. So our task force really dug into each of the different curricular choices, and we did an analysis of the specific lessons in each area. And I know you can't read all the microscopic words on these charts, but I just wanted to show you a little bit of what it looked like as we were working through this. So we were taking the different topics and comparing how did it lay out in each of the choices. For P3, that's Positive Prevention Plus, so PPP. Or PT, Puberty Talk, or the 3 Rs. And we were looking at how the topics were addressed and handled. They're all really going after the same ideas, but done in different ways, different methods, different materials. So we wanted to have a good sense of what those looked like across the different areas. And at this stage, we were working in small groups for this and sharing our findings with the task force. We were getting first impressions with our stickers in this stage. So kind of green was like, definitely we think this could be a fit. Yellow might have some questions. And then red felt like maybe not the best fit for us here. So that was our first go at it, and we had lots of great discussions around when we saw yellow, it didn't always mean that we wanted to rule something out. It might mean that we wanted to shore something up. So for example, in one of the choices, we know that we need to teach kids skills for developing healthy relationships and assertive communication skills. And in one of the choices we saw, there was more of a focus on avoiding unhealthy, and we were noting it would be rounded out more if we had more on the healthy too. So sometimes it was not a yes or a no, but more of how would we like to see this rounded out or improved to really meet the needs of 5th graders. And then we came back to another meeting and reflected back, looked at all of our feedback from the 4 parent information sessions that we had, where parents had a chance to look at all 3 of the choices and provide feedback to the task force before we made our final recommendation. And we reviewed all of that, reflected back on the work from all the prior meetings, and then tried to reach consensus on where we thought we would want to go for the recommendation. So as part of that process, we also used stickers, but in this phase, we were asking the team members to either say green, I strongly agree, or agree that we should include this in the pilot, or yes, I can support this, but I might still have some questions about the material. And we talked about that in the sense of when we're moving things into a pilot, we feel confident that they're important to include, but sometimes that's part of the pilot, we might feel like this could probably work, but we want to see how those things play out in a classroom, because looking at pages is different than seeing how it works with the kids in the classroom. So that was the spirit of that yellow color. And then red was, I have big concerns and I don't think that we should include this in the pilot. So we did 2 rounds in this. One was kind of right after we reflected on the initial thinking from our last meeting, and then round 2 was after we really dug into the parent feedback and had some discussion and a period of advocacy. And this is where we landed. So with Positive Prevention Plus, we felt that we should recommend that this be included in the pilot. General sense of overall clear and straightforward lessons that would be easy to implement. Also recognizing that this is the upper elementary version of the 7th grade material, so that continuum of learning would be present. We did hear some concerns about some of the diagrams in the different materials, and there were differing perspectives on this, but there were some choices, some diagrams that we noticed were raised in many of the sessions. So we were looking for where were those diagrams that there seemed to be kind of a common feeling that maybe it was too much information for 5th grade. So we recommend removing one from Positive Prevention Plus and also excluding the HIV lesson because we know they will get that material in 7th grade. And this particular one also includes information about sexually transmitted diseases, which we felt too much information for 5th grade at this time. And then another piece of this program is that there are a series of scenarios. So this is part of how the kids practice knowing how they would handle a challenging situation. And some of the scenarios the teachers felt could be a very good fit, and some they felt were beyond what we would want to introduce in 5th grade. So we know that there are many options of scenarios, and we would work with the teacher team during professional development to identify which ones felt like the best fit for 5th grade, and we could even modify the scenarios to if there was teacher agreement. So these things are things like learning assertive communication skills, things like how would you handle it if you were out shopping with friends and a friend thought that it might be a good idea to shoplift, that kind of situation. How would you handle it? So we could make sure that the tone and the subject matter is right for 5th grade. We also recommend moving puberty talk into the pilot. The publisher is Health Connected, so when you saw the neighboring districts listing Health Connected, this is the same publisher. They just have different names. They have Teen Talk and Puberty Talk. And this set of lessons, the methods are engaging. For 5th grade students, we felt this also had one diagram that seemed to resonate concern across the different groups that we would recommend excluding, as well as the HIV lesson. The learning about gender stereotypes is one of the requirements when we offer this program in 5th grade. And there's a really nice lesson in the 3 R's program that talks about is it okay for, a girl to be athletic and strong? Those kinds of things. That stereotypes, we don't want stereotypes to get in the way of what we think about when we think about a boy or a girl. So rounding out this lesson to include a 5th grade level conversation around we can be the people that we want to be. If we're a boy or a girl and we have an interest in something, we can pursue it, and we don't want to feel that we're limited because of stereotypes. Also in this program, again, a balancing situation in the healthy relationships, unhealthy relationships, just working with the trainer to round that out to make sure that we're having a balance between healthy examples and what to watch out for in unhealthy examples. And then the same thing with the scenarios, just working through that with the teachers to ensure that we're selecting scenarios that feel like a great fit for 5th grade. So you can see our stickers that represent our discussion and both of those. And the 3 R's, this is a tool that has some really great elements. It's a free online curriculum that anybody can access. And so it's something that I think we can pull from over time, but overall the feeling was that this feels more like a supplemental, and it doesn't feel like enough in itself, although it has some really nice features that we could pull from as we go forward and as we're enhancing our curriculum that eventually gets selected. So we looked at what our neighbors are using. Some are also in the task force mode for 5th grade. And again, just Health Connected is the publisher of Puberty Talk, so Positive Prevention Plus and Health Connected Puberty Talk middle school version are in place in many of our local districts. We know that parents, we got a lot of great feedback from parents, and it was very, very helpful. And we know that parents really want to be partners with district staff in helping support kids learning in this area, and they want to know specifically what will be taught. These things are the first set of feedback here are things that we heard throughout the sessions, and they're the same things that I shared with you at the last meeting, that some parents feel very grateful that we're going to be implementing a new curriculum, and some parents don't want their kids to learn this at school. We know our teachers need support and flexibility along the way, and flexibility in terms of determining how it will fit within the overall instructional calendar, so selecting the days for teaching. And we know that the community and our task force as well values a stepping stone approach for the kids, so recognizing that they will be learning more information in 7th grade and then again in high school, so keeping in mind the age of our kids and taking a stepping stone approach. That was something that came up in the curriculum review sessions with parents, and we also heard different concerns about the diagrams, the anatomy diagrams that are part of the program, and people had a lot of different perspectives on that, and I think it definitely personal thoughts were shared in the task force about which pieces felt appropriate and which ones did not. And so for the task force, we were looking really at where did we see commonality across the different conversations to make that decision, knowing that for some parents, we want to encourage opt-in as much as possible. We want everybody to be opting in, which is the default mode, but also knowing that for some parents, this information is not what they want for their kids at school, and that's okay too. We will provide an opt-out option that is meaningful. Parents also raised the issue of the scenarios, and as I mentioned, we'd be addressing that. So just as a reminder, by law, and of course in our hearts too, we want to provide parents with everything they need to be partners in this process, so we will be scheduling parent information sessions. I'm ready to go on that if we are able to get approval very soon. We want to be having those meetings and getting parents that information. And in those meetings, it's really kind of a page-by-page situation where they see exactly what will be used in the classroom when we talk about how to support conversations at home. And we also will extend an invitation for parents to opt out if they would like to do that. So we will provide a syllabus day by day of what exactly will be taught, and parents will have the right to opt into all. Just by default, everybody would be opting in, but they may opt out of some or all of the lessons. They can choose topics that they feel would be appropriate for their child if they want to have their child participate in some. And we will be developing an opt-out series of lessons that are connected to the 5th grade standards as an alternate, thinking about health and wellness learning goals for 5th graders, for kids who are opting out. And we also have our teacher training sessions ready to go if we're able to move forward. We want to be sure that teachers have the materials and the information and support that they would need. We want to give schools as much choice as possible in determining the teaching dates. We know that, as I mentioned before, we removed the HIV lessons and some of the diagrams in response to the feedback that we had, and we will be adjusting the scenarios with teacher input. And those scenarios then would be shared at the parent information session, so parents would know exactly what that looked like. So the plan would be to pilot in each of the 5th grade classrooms. Some schools would be using the PPP material, and other schools would be using Puberty Talk. And we would offer the option to our special education teachers in 5th grade as well. And of course, we would be notifying the parents and making sure that we have all of the support related to that. And I'm going to give a little more detail on this, on the why behind this, but our recommendation is that we teach the kids in their classroom groups, not separated by gender. And that was a piece of feedback from some of the community. Some community members hope that we will separate the kids by gender. And our task force spent time thinking about that and talking about it, and I'll share with you details about our thinking in a little bit. We also know that since the last batch of materials, we have some new aspects that will be part of the teaching that are now part of the California Healthy Youth Act, like the lessons on gender inclusivity and gender expression. And this is an area where we know both parents and staff members will need support. So we want to pay attention to that because that will be new since the last set of materials. And we also know that we will, during any pilot, we always want to gather feedback about how it's going from the students, the parents, and the teachers. And we'll need to work out the details of how this will happen, but in the 7th grade program, I know that we had a pre-post test for the kids. The programs include pieces like that. With parents, one of the, I think, really valuable pieces of the law is that we need to teach kids how to have conversations about these topics with trusted adults at home. So there are different homework pieces that are really about having conversations. So I think it would be very important to get feedback from parents on how did that part go? Did they feel like a partner in the process in terms of the parent information sessions, but also in terms of the homework pieces that are really home discussions? We're doing the medically accurate part of it, and the parents are doing the what does our family value. That's a really critical role for parents. So we want to be sure they have tools that support that. And then, of course, teachers will be our main source for the instructional value. How do the lessons work? Are the methods effective for our 5th graders? Then we talked about costs. The Positive Prevention Plus training is a longer training than the Puberty Talk piece, so that is one difference in just how the different organizations support the training. Puberty Talk does provide additional training if we found that it was needed. So it doesn't just have to be one day, but that's where they begin. And okay, getting back to why we are recommending to teach the kids together. This was a very spirited and wonderful discussion in the task force. And we had been revisiting this throughout the process, but then we spent a good chunk of our last meeting digging into where we wanted to land with this. And really, the baseline of this is that we know all of us want to be sure that we are building learning environments that include everybody, that are affirming and welcoming, and that every student and every family member feels a part of our community. So that was really our beginning for the conversation. We also know that some students don't identify as boy or girl. And so asking families or kids to choose a group to go to could be uncomfortable and even harmful for some of our students. And we read some articles about this and the potential effects of what can happen when kids don't feel a part of the community. And not just for kids who feel that way, but for all kids to know that we're one community and everybody has a place. And also we talked about how the relationship with a teacher who's familiar is really a benefit, especially when we're talking about topics where kids might have questions. And so the ability to feel comfortable in a classroom environment that's familiar could be an asset. And then just generally knowing that this is a topic, it can be uncomfortable, but it's also a normal part of human development, and we want kids to feel empowered to be able to talk to anybody they need to talk to in terms of that trusted adult. Sometimes, you know, a trusted adult is a dad or a mom, and maybe you're a boy or a girl, or just however we need to have those conversations to make it part of normalizing the fact that it's human development, and we can get past that initial moment of feeling uncomfortable and know that there's a learning team to support whatever questions may come up. And then just kind of a logistics issue of if we actually tried to do this. Some parents asked, could we make sure that boys only had a male teacher teaching it? We separated, and then girls had a female teacher. Just the logistics of I don't think that would actually be possible. And then just all of the all of the scheduling of moving the kids and all of that feels like a disruption that probably, wouldn't work out so well at the school site level. And then, just working with our consultant, we really couldn't find examples of districts in our immediate area separating the kids. I think she gave us one example from the East Bay, but really the best practice is really keeping the kids together, which is what we do in 7th grade here as well. So, if we have your approval to move forward with the pilot, we would go immediately into the parent information and professional development sessions. We would be teaching a series of lessons this spring, probably 5 or 6 lessons. We would need to, we want to clarify with the teachers on that, just how the teaching days would lay out, probably 5 to 6 days. We would be reconvening the task force to take a look at the feedback and make a recommendation this spring so that we could go into next year knowing our plan. That is our hope, although if we needed to stretch it out a little further, we could, because typically we're teaching these lessons in the spring, so we're not really up against that fall deadline if we needed more time.
Okay, do we have questions, comments for Allison? Satish does, go.
Always me first?
Yes, you're
Okay,
first.
good.
You're so weak.
Yeah, so I think a couple of simple questions. Okay, one is, I know it's a little hard to answer. Do you have some ballpark number or some anticipation on opting out? Like what would be the percentage of parents would be opting out? Do you have, at least based on the general sessions with each of the schools? Or do we have a threshold somewhere we say that, hey, this cannot, because I know that task force did a great job in selecting this thing, and we have taken people from different part of our community. The team is pretty good, but still, I know one of the sessions I also attended, so we heard how parents were talking, but many of them were supportive, and some of them have that. Since we are giving this choice.
Yes, so I think it may take us a couple of years to really get a sense of that, because I know that in 7th grade we have a fairly small number. I think it was less than 10% opting out. With 5th grade, when you're going into a pilot, I'm not sure, some people might be impacted by that. They may want to opt out because it's a pilot. That could happen. So we'll have to see. And then the second year when we're implementing whatever our choice is, that'll be kind of another benchmark. So I don't really know how that's going to go because it's been a few years since we've offered this in 5th grade. I definitely, we received some comments from parents, and then just anecdotally have heard that many parents are eager for us to get started with this. So I know many people want to be sure their kids can participate, and I think we'll have to see about the opt-outs. I wouldn't want to take a guess at that.
Success of the pilot, would this be an input for that, like before the implementation?
Meaning, would we take that into consideration?
Yeah, into consideration, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would be a data point as we go forward. Mm-hmm. Yes.
But that wouldn't help us. The pilot is to help us to decide which curriculum to use, and we aren't gathering data in a way that would tell us which curriculum. We could ask just question, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Do you, if we offer, do you think you would opt out? That could be a question, maybe, right, for parents. But we can't really use that as a data point for which one to select. I don't.
No, I mean it's something that we monitored. I know with the 7th grade material. I guess we would collect that information just as part of what happened. I'm sure.
So
yes.
Hypothetically, if one curriculum had a 90% opt-out rate, the other had 10% opt-out rate, wouldn't that be an influence in which one you choose? I'm
No,
exaggerating here.
Yeah, but no,
you wouldn't?
I don't feel that would be a reliable way of doing it, because we're not. It would be if we took the same curriculum and said we're going to do these 3 lessons to the kids, and then we're going to do these 3, and then somebody said if you use that one, we'd opt out versus that one. But I don't think it is statistically reliable to suggest that because it's 2 different schools, 2 different sets, different communities in schools. It's just too different to use that to make a decision about which curriculum, I think. Probably.
Sure. Okay, well, it gets in, I don't want to intrude on Satish's time. I have other things that may be related to this, but, yeah.
No, I thought we'll come back.
Okay,
Right?
Okay, go ahead, Jerry.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, I want to thank you, Allison. The amount of time you're up there tonight, I think probably is an indication of your workload, and I really appreciate. I think the open process. It's a lot more work for you and the district, but I think having this kind of openness and input, I think really helps to drive a better product at the end. So first, I just want to say thank you. Actually, and I want to thank you for putting those 5 pictures up there. So actually, it turns out if you zoom in on an iPad, you can read the little letters, and I actually did read.
Okay, good.
So please continue to insert these high-resolution photos in there. I guess my first question, and I read through this, and I would say it's, I spent an hour at one of your sessions, and I would say what's on there is pretty much consistent with my own feelings with just 40 minutes of flipping through the material. So I guess I like that because it's consistent with my feelings. And I guess one of the first questions I had was on that bottom right one where it talks about healthy relationships. And there were these red dots for puberty talk. And I actually had that same impression when I read the material. And so I understand that later, in the later rounds, everything is green. And I think part of that you talked about is because we'll work with the trainers to, I was wondering if you could say a bit more about that. What does that mean? Does that mean we're adding new material? We're taking out material? Who's the we that's going to be modifying the material? Or maybe if you share some of your thinking there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the red dots there were really about the focus on the unhealthy in that particular area. So that is another area where we could pull from the 3 R's if we felt that that was a good choice. I think, sometimes it can be dealt with just in kind of just making tweaks to the lesson design too. So I think that this is something that can be worked out when we work with the teachers and the trainer, kind of like the scenario piece, because we know that we want to give a balanced approach. This is something that also was feedback from some of the community sessions that, when we're talking about watch out for these kind of unhealthy friendship behaviors, to counter that with, well, what would that look like if it was, if it were a healthy relationship, a healthy friendship? So if your friend says, I'll only be your best friend if you play with me every day at recess, otherwise I'm not your friend anymore, countering that kind of example with a, well, what would it look like if you had a friend that where you had more of a give and take, and you could say, I'm going to play with my other friend, on the monkey bars today, but I'll meet you at the slide tomorrow, or those kinds of things. It was really about rounding out that lesson to be showing both sides, because the team and the community feedback really felt like in 5th grade it's important to help the kids kind of develop those mental pictures of what both sides look like so they can recognize the positive. So it was an example of something that we felt we could overcome with a little bit of modifying to the lesson.
So the mitigation you have in mind is really addition of material rather than removal of
yes.
some of the,
yes.
okay.
So we have to take a look at it, but I think this is, as we talked about it with the team, something that the teachers felt comfortable with. Working through those little minor tweaks that's something that our teachers are comfortable with, and they do that with all of the different curriculums. Just thinking, okay, well, this is what the material is, but how might I use my teaching skill to frame it in a different way, I guess.
And then the we that would be working with the teachers, would that be district staff, or would that be district staff along with consultants?
It would be district staff along with consultants. Okay. So the staff from Health Connected would be doing the training for Puberty Talk, and then staff from Cardia would be doing the training for Positive Prevention Plus. And we're required to be sure that we're providing the training, and they have that ready to go for us whenever we're ready. Mm-hmm.
Sylvia, did you have something?
Yeah, I have a couple comments and a few questions, so maybe I'll just start with a couple of them. So I agree with Jerry that thank you so much to you and to the task force for all the work, having gone also to look at the curriculums, and I know just the amount of grappling you've had to do with this subject it's very evident how well thought out it is. As a parent who went through with my older one, the old 5th grade curriculum, and then with my younger one who didn't get a 5th grade lesson and then got it in 7th grade, the difference is huge. And especially loved, so I really resonate with the whole part about the school teaching like the medical facts and the information, but then leaving it up to the families to then kind of import value upon those things. And the conversations I had with my daughter last year were really great. Somewhat uncomfortable at times, but it was growing for both of us. So I think that's a really good thing, and I'm glad to see that that's going to be the same kind of philosophy in 5th grade, because I think for us to, as a school, provide these opportunities for the children to engage with their parents on these topics is really great. So that's kind of my first comment. One question I had was, you had mentioned that California had kind of changed some of their requirements in the past year to include about gender. I'm wondering, just out of curiosity, is consent part of that as well?
Yes.
Okay, and then is consent covered in this curriculum? Because I don't know how old these curriculums are.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the California Healthy Youth Act, I think I attached that. It's kind of a one-page summary of what's required, so that's definitely a great resource. It lists all the required pieces, and definitely consent is a theme. It's also part of 7th grade. Mm-hmm. Lori?
So, when you're talking about the scenarios and kind of the feeling of the teachers that maybe there was still some work to be done on refining those and coming up with agreement, is the idea that there would kind of be a common pool of scenarios that the
yes.
teachers, regardless of which curriculum they're using, could pull from? Or are we A/B testing scenarios the way we're A/B testing curricula?
So within the curriculum, each one, there's a set of scenarios that are different that are part of the curriculum. So for the teachers using puberty talk, we would engage them in a conversation in the professional development session about, okay, these are the options. Which ones of these do we think would be the best fit? And then we would make agreement that everybody will use whatever set. So we would have the common set of scenarios used in all the classrooms piloting that curriculum, and then same thing for the other one. They're different because they're parts of the curriculum. But within each one, we would agree, okay, let's eliminate these. There's more than you need in there. So we would be able to select from a set.
So it is more of the A/B testing aligned with the two different.
Yes, it's part of the lessons, part of the lesson plan in each of the curriculum options.
And then whatever final set of scenarios you chose to go forward, you said that will be a part of the page-by-page parent info night.
Yes.
So the parents will have an opportunity to see what that final set is that was agreed upon as part of their determination.
Yes, exactly.
In their training.
Right.
Okay.
So what we did for 7th grade and what we would do for 5th grade is we would not use the teacher's guide, which is what we've been using in the parent sessions. It's a little hard to navigate. We used the classroom materials, slides or worksheet kind of thing, so that they can see what the kids would see, just different from the lesson plans. Mm-hmm.
I'll come back around.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to Satish.
Yes, good. So the outcome of the pilot, right? So now we run. Let's say we are at least the recommendation is to go with the 2, right?
Yes.
Correct. Right. So is there something like a checklist, or how do we say which is right or which is because we are going to pilot in multiple schools, okay, mutually completely independent, and you eventually choose one, right, to implement. So is there some benchmark or checklist or something which we'll say yes or no, or this is good or this is relatively better kind of thing? Have we thought, or do we have that list?
We haven't established all of the pieces of how we're going to collect the feedback yet. But in terms of piloting, it is true that we're in a little bit of a different situation with this because we wanted to ensure that all kids could access a lesson this spring rather than having time go by. So in other areas, sometimes we do a small set of piloting and they try both. But because we wanted to ensure that all kids could access a lesson, it's structured a little bit differently. So we will be using the same frames that we worked through with the task force in terms of what we're considering, but then we'll also have the information from the teachers on how did the methods work, how engaging was it, those kinds of things, the parent homework piece, the student data. So, we haven't identified all the specifics of that, but it's a standard part of the piloting process that we're in another feedback gathering stage and then bringing back another recommendation based on, yes, there will be some process of kind of, might be stickers, it might be rating, we'll always have something like that to offer back, but then there's also kind of that holistic discussion of, okay, stepping back and looking at the big picture, what do we feel would be the best fit?
So you fine-tune based on that, or we'll have yes or no, or we will have a fine-tuned version of it?
Oh, of the curriculum? Meaning will we
after
make
that
changes to the curriculum?
Correct, once we choose to use one of them.
We don't know yet, but we could. It could be, we're starting off with little minor tweaks, right? And we want to end up with the best fit possible for our kids while still following the law. So it could be an outcome that we make additional shifts to what's there and end up with kind of a suite of options. Things like pulling in the 3 R's, that kind of thing. Really, though, anytime we're choosing an adoption, we want to have a sense that we're getting to a core. So when we started the task force, we knew that we weren't going to just come in with kind of a make-your-own approach. We want to benefit from the expertise of the curriculum developers and the researchers, and we're going for what is our core, knowing that just like in any curriculum, we make minor shifts to that core to make it fit, but not trying to dismantle the whole thing and start from scratch. Looking for something that feels like a solid core.
Did you get your question answered?
Yep.
Okay.
I think I have a half question, so I don't have to come back.
Go ahead.
Okay. So will parents have an input on that? The final, once we run this pilot, the feedback mechanism include input from parents again or no?
The feedback from parents, I think in this next stage really, it feels that the most important feedback is going to be around that parent partnership piece. So that, the teachers are the ones who will know, is the instruction working in the classroom? The parents will be able to give us feedback on how is this parent partnership piece working? Are they having conversations? What does that homework piece look like? So I think, yes, we definitely will include feedback, and we'll continue to leave the curriculum, the notes and the materials available. This was asked in one of our community sessions. As we're going through this next phase, can people still just provide general feedback? Sure, yes. I mean, we can make that continually available. Some people may have not had a chance to look through the materials. That's fine. But really, we're honing in on, for parents, how is this support piece working for them? How is the instruction working from the teacher lens? And then how is the student engagement and learning piece working?
And I want to highlight, if I can, I hadn't understood this, and what Allison had said to me around the evaluation based on a conversation I had with Jerry is that it is required to do this engage. The curriculum has to include homework, if you will, that is done at home. And so that's how the parents are going to know what is being taught, and that is the thing they can give feedback on that will be considered definitely. That'll be an important thing to do. It is because they aren't in the class receiving the curriculum as instruction, they won't be able to give much feedback on that other than what they're learning from the engagement with their own children. But I think it's great. It's great to learn that, right? That's a requirement there, is that we have some sort of a interactive thing going on, so parents and children are interacting about that. And you mentioned that's something you got to experience. Yeah.
Okay, Jerry?
I actually have another question, but I'll follow up on this. I'll use my slot for this. So let's say, I understand what you're saying about wanting to get feedback from parents on the parent homework portion. So let's say my daughter, I have a 5th grader, so she'll be going through this year. And let's say she comes home and she says, well, this is what they talked about today in class, da-da-da-da-da-da. And then, and I don't like it, let's say. Will my feedback on that be weighted, or is that considered out of bounds because I wasn't actually there in the classroom to hear this?
Oh, that would be really great feedback about what your experience as a parent was, having your child come home and say X, Y, Z, and how you feel about that. So yes, those are things we can.
That would be in
But that's
scope.
different from evaluating the pilot and how does it work as the program. But yes, we would. Right. I mean, this is the conversation you and I have had. I'm just trying to keep separate the difference between a pilot to decide how is it as a curriculum, how a teacher interacts with it, with a student interacting with it. That's what makes it a curriculum. And yes, we will get feedback about the parents' feelings about it because they came home and talked to you. Here's what you have to say about it, right? And that, yes, that would be considered.
Maybe just a follow-up.
Go ahead,
Otherwise,
go ahead.
So it sounds like then, because I guess coming into this, I had some of the same questions Satish has, which is, what's the question we're trying to answer beyond which is better, right? Because I guess the engineering me is a little bit bothered by doing a pilot and just kind of going, well, we'll look at the results and decide which one is better. I actually would feel a bit better having sort of a rubric, or at least if you, not a definitive one, but kind of, and so it sounds like what Dr. Baker shared here, which is, okay, what we're doing this pilot is to see how the actual instructional experience in the classroom goes. So it sounds like that would be a major portion of the rubric, right? You may consider other things, but those sounds like in your mind would be more minor than that actual classroom instruction experience. So I think, I don't know if this is what Satish was asking, but I think for me, having some clarity on what's the research question we're answering, right? Because I don't know, it's like I read all this news about Brexit and I feel like they just want more time because, they just want more time. And I wonder if we're doing this pilot because we just want more time, or are there specific questions we're answering? It sounds like what you're saying is classroom instruction experience is one of those. So I just want, if there are others, I'd be interested in hearing staff's thoughts on this. So
yeah, definitely. So we absolutely will develop some tools for that process. And, I'm sure that going back to these questions that we considered in the task force also will help us frame that. So in terms of teaching methods and that stepping stone approach, is it at the right level of information for 5th grade? I mean, that's a piece that we want to gather information on because we're looking at the flat pages, but not how it rolls out with the kids, right? And, looking at these pieces with the teachers and getting their thoughts on the effectiveness. Are the kids learning? Is it engaging? Do parents feel a part of the conversation? So, yes, we haven't had a chance to get all of our process pieces in place, but I commit to having a process, and it won't just be lots of talking with no process.
Thank you, Allison.
Yeah.
Sylvia.
So my question is somewhat related to both of the gentlemen's questions. In terms of the differences between the two pilots, my question is kind of like, is the difference between them the lesson plans, or is the difference between them also part of the topics or the content? And if so, is one perceived as more conservative than another? And the reason why I'm asking this, because I can envision a scenario where, because parents talk and parents are at different schools, and one school might be getting one curriculum, another school might be getting another one, and then, if one is perceived to be maybe more socially conservative versus another one, there might be different kind of pushback or reaction to that, rightfully so, versus if it's like the way that the lesson is structured in the curriculum, which is more kind of at a teacher level. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right. So they're covering the same topics as outlined in the attachment, the California Healthy Youth Act requirements. So that was how we structured this activity. What is the big topic, and how is each curriculum addressing that topic? The way that it's addressed, there are different lesson plans, between the two curriculum choices. So there are differences in the way that we're going after that learning. So that is definitely a difference. And I don't know what people perceive about the different curriculum. I know that in some of the feedback, people expressed interest in PPP because they know that it's the complement to the 7th grade material, for example. So I know there's a community interest in that. So I think we'll have to see what people think as we go through the pilot.
I do, if I can just say, these are great questions, and it seems to me that the team has come up with 2 different curricula, and it would be interesting to create that rubric with, well, why didn't we just pick one, right? What is it that we were wondering about one versus the other? And one was which one aligns best with the 7th grade, for example. That would be the tool we designed that should be based on why we selected those 2. What did we think might be similar? Were they similar like we thought they were, or were they actually? Does it feel different, et cetera? So we have not designed it, but that's what we should be designing to, I think, to include. To make our assessment.
Isn't that effectively what the task force did by breaking down?
But they haven't taught it. What I'm saying is, what are we learning from the instruction of it that does that, right?
Right, yeah. So, I mean, when we're talking about a rubric, though, we're talking about a rubric for the teachers to evaluate how well the lesson plan they were given met the needs of the learners in the classroom, right? So they're taking each of these topics and they're saying, I'm going to give this one a 5 because this one totally went smoothly, and I'm going to give this one a 3 because it didn't.
Right, but on the parent side, they had all sorts of conversations and debated and looked at different things, and they'll say, one of the things we wondered about from a parent perspective and what that might be like, et cetera, there was some question about blank. And so it's not all on the teacher. I do think it's primarily there because the teachers are the ones who will be teaching it. There might have been questions in the group about, I wonder how kids would react to blank. And so when we ask questions of the kids, we would be able to say, there was no difference between their, whether it was this curriculum or that, or it seems like a lot of them had a question about this and others didn't. I'm just saying you have to have a basis for what you're making a decision on, which is what I'm hearing from the group.
From the teacher perspective, I totally get a rubric. From the parent perspective, I guess for me as a parent, like I don't know that I'd want to be limited in I wouldn't want questions that were asking me about a specific thing. I just want a perpetual online comment box so that I could address whatever it was, right? So it's two different tools. One is more of a rubric that you're developing with the teachers to score the actual tool of the lesson plan, right? And then one is the parent perspective, which is I just want to be able to tell you what's on my mind based on what's happening with my child.
Right. And it's not either or. I would just humbly request that you trust the expertise of my team, who knows how to put together surveys and things to get at what it is we're trying to get to. I'm just getting to, in the end, because by policy, we actually have to give more weight to what the experts, who are our teachers, are saying about it. That's in policy and everything, and so we will be doing that. So I don't want to get too bogged down in the board meeting now on what is the instrument and what that's going to look like, and we can certainly engage you all in that conversation, but developing an instrument is going to take us a while, right? I mean, like, what are we assessing? What are the questions we're going to ask? It's multi-tiered, and so if we can keep it at what is the, in terms of the feedback that's going to help us, is what are the kinds of things you want to make sure are included in an assessment that is broad, because we've agreed we're doing kids, parents, and teachers for sure. What else do you think needs to be in there, and then we will work on an instrument to do that.
It will be good in some point of time to share that, like whatever thought we have. So what will be that end of it? How it should be evaluated against, kind of something.
So, okay, Lori, you were next.
I have another question, but I guess I'm going to push back just a little bit, because I guess what I come back to is what Jerry said and what Satish said about ultimately how are we getting to the point where we're adopting that, and I feel like that is what I'm expressing, is that I absolutely want whatever you bring us to be based on the expert opinion, and to get to that I absolutely value the parent input piece, and I want them to feel free to be able to share whatever it is, and for that to be an important part of what's considered. But ultimately, for the curriculum adoption, I want that rubric to be coming from what's working and what's not working in the classroom with our kids. And I'm not sure that, is that what I'm hearing you saying? Because I don't know if I am.
I'm saying our job should be to gather all the information And it is wise and it is policy that we give weight, more weight, to the experts. Again, by ed code, by our own policies, that's the way we do it. So that will be the case, and I think we need to listen to the kids, we need to listen to the parents, and we will be more open-ended with that than we will with the question of, is it good for teaching and learning? Or do teachers find that? So
So, but ultimately, whatever you bring us back as the ultimately this pilot results in you coming to us with a recommendation for adoption of a single curricula.
Along with a lot of data about what we learned, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So my question then, so in the slide about the, I think it's actually in the cost slide, which it's not about the cost per se, but more about the fact that the PPP has 2 days worth of training, 2 days worth of subs to release teachers. I understand that's a little bit dictated by what the curriculum developer is telling you is needed, but it seems like in one there maybe is more opportunity for some of that discussion with colleagues around some of the different pieces there that maybe wouldn't have time for in the single day in puberty talk. Do you have any sort of idea if there's a contingency for if more time was needed? Would it be okay to have an equal number of, or I don't even care if it's equal. I just care that it's an appropriate amount of time for those discussions to take place with those two.
I think that in talking with the trainers, I think they feel confident in the plan that they put forward, that they're going to be able to get it done. The Positive Prevention Plus has slightly more lessons, more material there. In the future, we could extend the time for puberty talk if we thought it was needed. I think honestly it would be really tough to do that this spring, just given the calendars and everything. It's just we have so many things that are happening in the spring, so maybe not impossible, but very challenging because we are trying to keep the teachers on hold with, okay, don't plan any field trips on these days, and these are our tentative dates, just waiting till we know our plan, but we all know how spring calendars can get, and I think we would be bumping up against some constraints, although we could, if we felt that this was not sufficient and got that feedback in the pilot, we could extend it if that was the one that was chosen.
Okay. Sylvia, anything more?
Yeah. I wanted to go back to what Craig was saying earlier and kind of respond to that a little bit in terms of, I'm feeling like if the majority of us on the board are having these kind of questions and confusion about the pilot and the purpose of the pilot and the two curriculums and these things, I feel like that's going to be a similar response in the community. And so I think it would be important in the messaging to the parents when you're rolling out the pilot that, what you're evaluating. Because again, going back to if parents aren't really, if it's not explained to them, they will assume often the worst, right? So to explain, this is that the difference between the two has more to do with like the structure of the lesson or the activities, whatever, the curriculum, versus like the content, which is going to be the same for each one because it's based on the healthy child standards, right? So I just feel like that. I just wanted to make that comment to say that there should be some very clear messaging, and then also what kind of parent feedback you're looking for, and to be more explicit about what we're asking for from the parents in terms of the feedback.
Yes, and we are still working with our consultant who, this is one of the pieces that she'll help us with. So she, has supported districts through the pilot in many different places. So I know that we can also draw upon her expertise for some of these things and get to that clarity.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. We'll just go back. Let's finish. So each of us finish as we go back through. So go ahead and finish.
Got like 2 more, is that?
Good.
Okay. All right. So you had mentioned the spring schedule and how it's super impacted for the 5th grade teachers. I know just with 5th grade too, they're doing all the assessments and all that stuff in the spring as well. So, you know, they've had a few years now where they haven't had to then also add in this additional week of curriculum in addition to, you know, trying to get through, you know, 5th grade, whatever, right, all the other stuff. So where, or is there any kind of support for them other than the, you know, the training? Is there any kind of internal support to help them get through all the additional, all the things that they already have to hit the mark on?
So, you know, I know that principals will support their teachers in figuring that out, and I've been sending updates along the way, so everybody knows that we've been working on this, and I've been sharing as much detail as I can so they know it's coming. And, you know, I think the biggest support we can give them is as much flexibility as we can in timing. So really the only requirements are we know it has to be after the parent information session, and whatever deadline we set for getting the pilot information done. So we'll give them those bumpers, but then give them all that flexibility in between to figure out what will work for them, because that's really a site level thing where they know their special events and their field trips and different things that are going on, and they know that it's coming. And we've had a lot of teachers on the task force as well as updates to the teachers. We offered a review session for the teachers as well who are not on the task force. So I know it's never easy to add another thing, but I think we're all expecting it.
You said you had another one?
Just a final comment. I wanted to affirm the decision to keep the boys and the girls together in the same classroom with the same teacher. I think, especially with students who may be LGBTQ and already are marginalized, we don't want to do anything that would bring additional harm or put them in an unsafe environment. So I really affirm that decision. I also think, I agree that like having the teacher that knows those students is going to be the most effective way to teach them.
And I do know, I just want to clarify, some schools have shared collaborative teaching arrangements, so might be a familiar teacher that's not their homeroom teacher if they already have a setup like that for science lessons or something, for example. Yeah.
Okay, Satish, anything more?
Yeah, quick one. The cost, right? So I thought that we had initially you had projected some cost on this, right? So is it something different here, or is it any significance of showing these figures here, or is it well within that what our budgeted?
Just because I wanted to include that as part of the information, because it's part of the bigger budget picture, just to be making sure that everyone had access to that information.
Okay, so it's not something additional, right?
No, I mean, any time that we're considering a pilot, we always look at all of these elements, the teaching methods and the cost, just as a factor to know. Mm-hmm.
Good. Jerry, anything more?
Oh yes. No, sorry. I'll try to keep this succinct. So I'll just moving around the deck here. Under the slide on plans for piloting, if you go to that. So we'll have this for, the plan is every general education 5th class, but then it says offer piloting for special ed. So is the intent there that it's optional and up to the teacher, or up to who makes it optional, I guess? Who makes that decision?
Yeah, I think this is something that we need to pay attention to for 5th grade and for 7th grade going forward. So all of the materials are designed to be accessible for all students, and many of our special education students are participating in science lessons in their regular classroom. So for that set of students, they'll be accessing the material. But for kids who are in special classrooms where they're not coming into the regular general ed class for science, I think that we wouldn't want to require everybody to use it in the pilot, because we need to see if it's going to be the right fit. And we may find that we need to seek some alternatives also, you know, to make it accessible, make the information understandable for, you know, kids who have special needs. So I think that's something that we need to be thinking about going into next year. Sometimes the publishers offer modified curriculum sets for that. Some of the special ed teachers have expressed interest in, once we get to the final solution, our adopted material, that they would be willing to work on adapting it to fit the needs of our kids. So I just didn't want to forget to mention that, because I think, you know, we need to make sure all of our kids are really empowered with information and protected and not missing important life information.
And I appreciate you sort of in the committee to sort of call out this scenario and thinking about that. My question is, in your mind, who would make that decision whether to opt in or not? Would that be the parent?
I think the teachers,
okay.
Yes, because we don't need to pilot it in every single classroom. You know, not every classroom, it might not be a need for every kid at this moment. Right. I think we're going to rely upon the teachers and the principals to think about if they want to opt in for that. I think that we will have some, and some it might not be the right time, and they may want to wait for an opportunity to modify the curriculum to make sure it's the right fit for the kids. Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. So another one then is about, I guess I haven't been talking to the microphone here. Understanding a bit more about the two curriculums in terms of the teaching experience and then that at-home piece. I was just wondering if you could just comment a bit. I try to infer this in the material reading, but it's really hard. Just in terms of, do they both, for instance, take the same amount of time to teach in the classroom? Do they have, in terms of lecture/activity, what are they like? And then if you could comment a bit about the homework engagement piece. I'm just trying to, because to your point, I read through the static pages, and I'm trying to understand in my mind what that experience is like. So I was wondering if you've looked at this a lot more, if you could share some thoughts on this.
So generally speaking, you know, we haven't tested it yet, but generally speaking, the Positive Prevention Plus material is supported by lots of slides and is more of a presentation format, and that's true in 7th grade too. It's kind of, you know, really clear. Slide 1, this is what we say. Slide 2, and structured in that way. And there are quite a few opportunities for home engagement, the conversation piece that we talked about in that curriculum. And there are more lessons overall available in that curriculum, although we were eliminating that HIV piece. So it's a little bit longer. I think it will end up only being probably 1 lesson longer, but we would want to talk to the teachers about how those lessons were stretched out and if we were going to put a couple together, that kind of thing. And the puberty talk in general, the methods are not so much presentation, more discussion and interactive kinds of approaches. And there are, I think, fewer homework kind of assignments, but definitely it's still present. So the teaching methods are different between the two, although the content that they're getting after is the same as related to Chaya. But definitely I would say that's probably the biggest difference between the two programs, the method, the approach.
Thanks. Then the next question then is around going back to the pilot. So you talked about earlier that we probably do this on a per school basis. Some schools get this. Is it feasible to do it so that each school can have both? So it's on perhaps a per classroom or per teacher basis rather than at a per school basis. And the reason I ask is earlier the point came up, if, for instance, we got certain results. I think if you're running these sort of A/B tests, you want to eliminate as many variables as you can. And it seems like school site, that's actually a significant variable, so that, I don't know, it's just you get slightly more accurate results, I think. I understand there are logistical challenges. I was wondering if that's something you've considered and what you think about that.
The logistical challenges are huge. I just want to be honest about that because of the spring schedules. So I had collected some initial information from schools about which dates they knew they wouldn't be available, and really it's been kind of a puzzle piece situation of trying to make sure everybody can come on one of the set of potential dates. So I don't know that we would actually be able to achieve a mix at both sites, although at least one site I think we will land in that place, but I don't know if we would be able to achieve that just because of the spring. The calendars are just so tight this time of year. We could make an effort for that if it was something that was very important to the board, but I think it will be very challenging.
Okay.
And what about that? What if we ended up with, if there are 2 or 3 schools that naturally could make that happen without too much logistical issue, that might be interesting to have if that can happen. But I do get it. It's really hard because we have to do all that training. We're on a short timeline. Their schedules. How do you work it all in? But maybe if it does work in a way that would be, in fact, there could be schools that would value that opportunity, the teachers themselves, to be able to learn, from their next door neighbor about that or something.
Right.
So maybe we could look into it anyway and see if it's feasible.
But sorry, wanted to add something there. So would be good that the same people or same set of people assessing both? That's our question, right? Like I'm doing both, and I'll be able to say which is better, probably, rather than having two different set of people assessing two different things.
And in most normal pilots, that's what you'd want to do, and you'd have the teacher try out both and do comparison. The difference between this and others is it is time locked. That it's a very small set in a small period of time that you have to teach, and so the only way we'd be able to do it fully would be actually to double the length of what it's supposed to be and have them a particular, and that doesn't make sense because the children just got that curriculum, right? So it's a little different animal from doing that with a reading curriculum or doing that with in other areas, because you can kind of double do it and over a period of time. So it's just really hard. I can't think of a way of piloting that way. I can see a way of sharing in a school and at least learning from one another, because your colleagues, you do that all the time, you partner. So I think there might be a way to do that, but to really think that all the teachers are going to essentially do both curricula, we're just not set up to do that, unfortunately.
But it'll be a challenge in the other way. It'll be a challenge also to decide which is better either.
I just have faith that we can do that. People do it. We're not the only ones who've done this. People do piloting, and we'll figure it out. I think it does remind me a little bit of the process we used to appoint a board member. On some level, we created criteria. We made sure we stay focused on those. We went through a process where we asked the question. It might have felt like, what if we don't come to an idea? You just keep coming back. You figure it out, and it works out really well. So I have a feeling it's going to work out a lot like that, and I have faith in that's the way it'll be.
Anything else, Jerry?
No, that's all. Thanks.
Okay, Lori.
So my final comments are also going to be about process. That I think in part of this, I guess my level of comfort with it is knowing that our process this time with even putting the task force together was so inclusive and so transparent, and the work of the task force has been so inclusive and so transparent, and the multiple updates we've received with lots of opportunities for community engagement up until now. And there's a big part of me that wants to honor that work. I mean, we have task force members here tonight, and we know part of our own team was part of that, a very big part of that. And if this is where they landed and they're comfortable with that, I feel really comfortable with that, because I know that was such a robust process for us this time, and we learned so much from maybe when we made missteps before and weren't quite as robust with how transparent and inclusive we were and all of that. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Much like Sylvia, I definitely want to acknowledge and thank the task force for all of I'm sure they were difficult conversations around the recommendation to be gender inclusive, but I'm so glad that that's where we landed. I think that's what's best for kids. And so I'm right there with you, and thank you for that recommendation to us. And otherwise, I guess I want to give Phyllis an opportunity to make not only comments, but questions. Did you get your questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I just have a couple of comments. Again, as already expressed by everybody, thank you to the task force and to you for all your hard work. When we did the 7th grade the first time, it was a mess. When we did the 7th grade the second time, we actually only piloted one thing. We didn't pilot a second one. And from my perspective and what I'm hearing from the community and all, it's working really well. So I think we have to make sure that we trust that we've done this before, other districts have done this before, and I know that we can do it successfully, and we're going to have a good outcome for our kids. And I keep going back to the fact that for those parents, and I think there are going to be very few, but for those parents who don't agree with what we're doing, they have the opt-out option with a good curriculum to supplement their health knowledge as well, even if they don't do the human growth. So I like the choices that you've made. I went through the curriculum as well, and I think those two are the good ones to pilot. So if there aren't any more questions from us, I'm going to go to the community. Are we ready for that? Okay. So
comment card.
Yeah, let's hear from
Are you
Doc.
coming back to us after public comment? You're coming back to us?
Yeah, because we might also be making
that
a
was going to be my
decision,
question.
so yes.
Okay,
This
all right.
is discussion action, so we
Yes.
need to decide after
Yes.
whether we're going to act
Okay.
on it. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so we have Dr. Christina Sheridan. Sorry, Galen. It's
Go, okay,
sorry.
Galen.
Okay, Galen, he's going
There's
to go
just three
first.
of us, so.
All right.
Okay, so I have 3 minutes. So I prepared all these words because I expected to have to defend the work of the task force, and obviously I don't. I am on the task force. I've got 2 kids in the district. And in addition, I've been coaching youth sports for about 5 years now. So there's a couple of hundred parents, over 100 kids that I've had to build relationships with. Talking about the 2 curricula, they are taught in very different ways. Honestly, it's very hard to choose. If we had to choose one, we'd have to still be meeting. That's just kind of the bottom line. I feel like the PPP, it's a very good curriculum. It has everything you want. Puberty Talk is likewise very, very good. And it had a few things in it that were just better than everything else that were like, when it talks about consent, it does it better than anything else that I've ever seen, right? So the choices are difficult. The good news is we have really, really good teachers. I spent a lot of hours in this room, in this room with them, going over all of this. My kids have had a bunch of teachers. I've had very good experiences with the teachers here. I trust them. And so when they come back with feedback, I feel like we're going to get really good feedback. And, there is no perfect answer for this. It's one of those things where they say there's no right answer, but there are a lot of wrong ones. We've got two answers here that are obviously not wrong. And we're going to end up in good shape, whatever decision we make. I really like the idea of trying to find some statistical rigor in this. That's creating too much work for them. We're already asking them to do handstands and walk 100 meters on their hands. That would be turning it into a mile. So we're going to end up at a good place. So just trust the staff to do their jobs is what I'd say. Okay.
Thank you, Galen. Dr. Christina Sheridan.
Good evening. I know it's a long day for everybody. So I am a parent of a 5th grader who's at Stockholmeyer, and I have an 8th grader at Cupertino Middle. I'm also a pediatric cardiologist and a department chair at the Santa Clara Valley Medical Center. So Galen asked me to speak on behalf of the curriculum. And again, Allison, great job. A lot of strong work for putting it all together. I did review the 2 curriculums side by side and agree the content is pretty similar, but the delivery has its variability. And I think we also have to remember that this is sort of first pass, right? Because these are 5th graders. And being a mom of a 5th grader, I remember certain conversations where, you look back like, hey, Mom, where do babies come from? Then my husband and I always give them the facts, only the facts, get the giggles out, and then they sit there and go, okay, that's gross. Can I go play now? So we're going to get a lot of those reactions, but remember, we have 7th grade as well, 6th grade, for more of that information to be absorbed. And for some of the curricula, I liked how they had some group discussion, because in the age of technology and presentations, our kids are always on screens, and so if we can facilitate them to talk with one another, form those phrases, those conversations, it's a win-win. But in terms of how do we judge which curriculum, again, we trust our teachers, like Galen said, and I think a success is how, at the end of the day, if the agendas are met, within the time frame. And then, when my daughter went through the 7th grade puberty talk curriculum, I remember sitting down with her and all the papers, And I was amazed at how broad and how much material was taught to them. And it made me reflect on what I was taught in 7th grade, and it was very different. But the thing is, we know puberty hasn't changed over the generation. Anatomy hasn't changed. But the way we present it is changing because we have, like I said, acceptance of all the gender fluidity and the anti-bullying, which is great. So I think end of the day, when we get the feedback from the parents are not going to know which curriculum we tried. It's more of, did you bond with your child? Did you get to a place where you didn't before, after that week? And that conversation is going to continue for the next years and beyond. So that's sort of my take on it. And again, we give them the facts, we give them the diagrams, the medical, and then kind of start the conversation. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Semele Heller?
This is actually the one I came to talk about tonight. Math was a bonus. So like Gail and I got to serve on the task force, and I just want to take 1 second and tell you that as organized and competent as Allison seems up here, she is just that way in the task force. You really could not have selected a better leader for this task force, and I commend her work so strongly. And I also, the staff members, we have teachers and an administrator, and they've been fantastic, which has been such a good group. And it's been really a pleasure and an honor to be part of it. I strongly urge you to accept the recommendation to do both curricula. They are, as everybody has said, right, they present very much of the same material, but in such a different way. And I think it's super important that you approve it tonight so that it can be piloted this spring. So I have an 8th grader who got the old 5th grade curriculum and the new 7th grade, which was awesome. I have a 6th grader who didn't get anything in 5th grade, and I don't want anybody else to be in that position because this is so valuable for our children and our community. And this is the time, right? The teachers on our task force have been very clear that spring is the time to do this, right? You can't teach this kind of lesson in September because those relationships between the teacher and the students and among the students, they're not there yet. One of their teachers who has a lot of years of experience teaching said super clearly, this is a lesson for May, right? Because we want our kids to have those relationships with their teacher and that comfort level. And if you approve it now, then that's possible. I urge you to do that tonight and not to make us wait another year to do that. And I also want to echo the call to trust our teachers. I've been delighted as a parent to be part of this, and I think it was very valuable to have parents be part of this initial evaluation of all the curricula. But when it comes to which one do we pick, to me, the most important voices in the room on that subject are going to be our educators. So I urge you to listen to what they recommend when we come down to picking one curriculum to go forward with. Thank you.
Thank you, Semele. We have no more public comments, so now this is a discussion action item. So are we going to act on this tonight? And if we are, we need a motion.
Before the motion, I just one more comment. So I'm generally supportive of the proposal. I guess I would ask as a request that when we collect the feedback, we get both qualitative feedback, written type things, but I understand we're not trying to load a lot of work on the staff here, but I think something as simple as the color dots, something like that, to some quantitative feedback would be useful also. So it's a request to staff to see if we could include both quantitative and qualitative feedback when we collect the results.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I will move that we move forward with piloting both the Positive Prevention Plus and Puberty Talk 5th grade human growth and development curricula as recommended.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Sylvia seconds. Any more discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, keep us posted.
Okay, I will.
Okay.
Thank you.
So now we have 7.2, adopt resolution of the funding for children with disabilities. Again, this is discussion action. So do we have a presentation or anything? We mentioned this last time.
Right.
It was in our board packet. So let's have a motion, and then if anybody has discussion, we'll have it. Does anybody have a motion to approve the resolution?
I can motion to approve resolution number 18-19-16, funding for children with disabilities.
Is there a second?
Second the motion.
Okay, seconded by Jerry. Now, is there discussion about this?
So I'm going to give you more of an update when we get to board activity. But AB 428, which is what this resolution is built around, is one of the considered key legislation by our California School Boards Association for this year. And really the idea around it is that it would go a long way in helping to correct several long-standing deficiencies in the way that we fund special education. And I think of particular note to us as a K-8 district is just that this really looks at addressing programs for serving preschoolers with disabilities and supporting all of the research that's out there on how key early intervention is in supporting our students with their special education needs. So that's my comments on that.
Any other discussion? So I would just like to say I have long been a critic of the way our state handles special education and the mandates they put on districts and all of that. So I think anytime we can give support funds for special education, it's a good thing. So we have a motion on the table, seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Motion carries 5-0. 8.1, approval of second interim for 18-19.
Start with because it's an action item, do a motion and a second. And
oh, sure. Okay.
See if
this is an action item, so we'll take a motion and a second first, and then we'll hear from Jeff.
So I move to approve the second interim report for 2018-19 fiscal year.
Second?
I'll second it.
Satish seconds. Okay. Jerry. Jeff.
Thank you. Just a quick point of reference. When you go to the board presentation, it is the same presentation that I brought to you at the first one with the addition of just some red lettering on a few of the slides. What that represented were any changes from the very first time we brought this to you, with the exception on this of the slide on ADA. Other than that, all the other parts of the document do remain the same. The numbers on the multi-year projection are as of last week. Sorry, right? Last week. Sorry about that. So I'll take if you have any questions.
For Jeff? It's a bummer, but no questions.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you, Jeff. Board and superintendent activity. I'm going to start with Sylvia.
This has been very busy. I'm trying to pull up my notes. Sorry. Okay, so Phyllis and I went to the Enrollment and Facilities Committee meeting. We met for the majority of the day on Monday. It was a good meeting. We're going to meet again with more specific numbers. But basically, we're exploring redrawing boundaries and exploring school closures. We also talked about the possibility of a new site for the district office, possibly Nan Allen. But that's nothing. I mean, basically, we need more information. And then I attended the strategic planning meeting, which I thought was great, just having the chance to discuss more with the parents with everybody about like the 3 different self-directed, innovative, creative, and civic-minded. And one of the ideas that came out of it was changing self-directed to fearless learner, which I loved. But that's just nothing is set. So, but it was just really great conversation. I've attended a couple different schools these last 2 weeks. Lincoln, CMS, and Blue Hills. Blue Hills was amazing in terms of the way they're already integrating STEAM in their curriculum. So I know that we've been talking about Blue Hills as a STEAM school, and just walking through the classrooms and seeing it in action was really cool. So, yeah.
Satish? You've been in India.
Yeah, I came 2 hours before the board meeting. I landed here, so it's a long one. I think, but just before taking off to India, I went to Eisenhower. I think you were there too for the reading. So I had a 5th grade. So we had a competition between the teacher, board member, and the student. Of course, I was the last. So reading a book and asking questions. So it was pretty good. So I spent probably about 40 minutes in the classroom. The same evening, same afternoon, I went to India. So
Jerry.
I've been, I guess, along with everybody else, going to these different schools with Dr. Baker. I wanted to call out Montclair. Got to visit. It's a wonderful place. They gave they asked a lot of hard questions for Dr. Baker, but at the end, the PTO presented Steve with a check. So very much appreciate that. It was really, really nice. I think it speaks to the generosity of the Montclair community. I guess the other thing I just want to plug, Lincoln's having a STEAM fair next Thursday. I think y'all invited. So it's Mrs. Karen, Mrs. McQuinn, Karen McQuinn, is a teacher, is really driving it. I just want to, just take this moment to thank her for the energy she's put into this is our first ever STEAM fair, and it's the attendance is actually higher than, or the sign up much higher than what we've had the last couple of years. She's really put her heart into it. I just want to thank her for doing that. So thanks.
Lori?
Okay. So as well, have been enjoying the 25 presentations very much that I've been able to attend, and it's been really heartwarming to hear, that the conversations going on with parents and the genuine curiosity and wanting to understand and then wanting to partner. So I'm really appreciating that. I got to spend several hours with our Lion Pride over at Hyde. So thank you to the Hyde staff for sharing their time with me and letting me learn about our Hyde Middle School. And then I'm going to skip most of the smaller things, but I'm going to go to the Santa Clara County School Boards Association Legislative Brunch, which is an annual brunch that they have to bring in speakers from both our local state legislature as well as other key policy-making officials. So we heard from Mike Kirst, who's the outgoing board president for the California Board of Education. We heard from a panel of 3 of our state senators and from, again, a panel of several of our assembly members, and then closed out with Ro Khanna. And because I'm going to talk more about the state legislature stuff with the next one, I just want to mention briefly that one of the things that our Congressman Khanna was speaking to and working on is some key legislation around looking for IDEA, which is the federal portion of our special education funding, to work towards asking Congress to fully fund that. Right now, apparently, they are only funding less than 40% of what IDEA should be funded at in terms of the way that the law was originally authored. And so he and others are co-sponsoring legislation this year to try and get into the federal budget full funding for the IDEA program. So that's something that, if anybody out there in TV land wants to write to support Congressman Khanna in that work, that certainly benefits all of our students in this district, as well as students all over the country. And then our CSBA Legislative Action Day, so that's our California School Boards put together a legislative action day. So it was apparently the largest in the history of the organization. We had 250 of us from all over California who descended on the Capitol to lobby our, actually the black and white ones.
Oh, this?
Yeah.
Top one or the whole thing?
There's copies for everybody for that one.
So this is a set? Is that how it works?
Yeah, probably.
That's.
I think you keep.
Oh, I keep my set? Oh, I got it.
I don't know how they're collated.
Yes, I believe that's right.
Nope, it's one of each, Phyllis. You were right. One of each. sorry.
Okay.
So we'll let them get passed down. But anyway, and then I gave you each a copy. So the color copies are the actual leave-behinds for the members of the legislature, and then the black and whites are the briefing sheets for you all that go into all of the key legislation, as well as some of the high-level topics that CSBA is highlighting this year. Obviously, the most important being full and fair funding for public education in California, and because it can't be said enough, as a district that's in the bottom 2% of funding statewide, full and fair funding is super important for Cupertino Union. So we spent a fair bit of time advocating for the Assembly Bill 39 Maritsuchi, which is on the top of your co-sponsored bills, your CSBA co-sponsored bills, which is looking to bring the base funding up to the average of the 50 states by 2020, and then up to the top 10% of states nationwide by 2025. There's a parallel bill on the Senate side that's Portantino SB 729. We spent a fair bit of time as well talking about some other key legislation. I already mentioned AB 428, which was the special education funding, and then a key piece on creating a transportation cost of living adjustment so that we'd get some help with our home to school transportation costs year over year, and then some other bills that I can let you guys read through. I would highly recommend that anybody else who would like to join me next year up in Sacramento. It was a great day, and it was a lot of, I think, very productive conversations. We left the day with our delegation from the Bay Area actually getting commitment from one of our assembly members, Mark Berman, to co-author AB 39 for us. So that's, full and fair funding, getting on board with the base funding, and he's actually going to be a co-author now. So, the one other one I wanted to draw your attention to on the back side, the SCA 5, which is a state constitutional amendment. This is actually authored by our state senator Jerry Hill and co-authored by Mark Berman as well, which would greatly benefit Cupertino Union, because what this proposes to do would be to put to the voters a proposal in 2020 to lower the threshold to pass parcel taxes to 55%. So we all know that right now that requires the full supermajority of 66 2/3, so that would do what has already been done to bonds, which is lower the threshold down to 55%. So still a supermajority, but a more achievable supermajority for districts to pass parcels. So that's another key piece. So if anybody would sees any of our local legislators, these are great things to talk to them about, and especially to thank our local legislators who have co-sponsored some of that activity for their service and their work and their advocacy on behalf of districts like ours. And that is it.
Okay, thank you. And I went to the enrollment meeting with Sylvia, and that was great. Thank you for giving the report. I have done several school visits, finally starting through that, and on one day this week, Leslie and I shepherded a group of Chinese educators who have a nonprofit that is supporting rural schools in China. And they came to look at kind of what we do here and how it differs, and the president of their organization from China came, and he had never been in an American school before. So Leslie took us to Nimitz and to Montclair. So that was an interesting day to spend with them, and they had a lot of interesting questions. So. Yeah, so that's it. So if we're done, we are going to adjourn to close. Oh, no, we're not. We're going to go to agenda setting.
I thought of one more. Sorry. Okay. Sylvia and I last night were at the reflection ceremony for our Cupertino, Sunnyvale, Fremont PTA Association, celebrating the arts for all our kids and giving out the awards. So many of our Cupertino Union kids in our elementary and middle schools received those reflections awards last night. So thank you to them for the invitation.
Okay. So next we have agenda setting. Anybody have anything they want to see on a future agenda?
You all got the message about giving us dates so that we can work through, send to Renee, trying to figure out our August agenda stuff. So just a reminder to send us your availability.
Did I get something?
I did have a question about, we have these visits to the central kitchen set up. Are these board meetings, public board meetings, or they're not? Because there's not. I just want
we're
to
only
check.
going two at a time. I
At
think
this
Satisha's
point, it's
going-
two at a time,
Okay.
so it'll depend. Satisha has not signed up for it, but I think we're going to treat that differently maybe so that we don't
Because
have
I was
to
traveling,
agendize.
I did not respond for
Of
that.
course, yeah.
Yeah, so
But, yeah, so if you are the different one, then we don't have to have a special meeting because it's you and I are together and they're together. And
I can join one of you.
so if you
which
join
one?
one of us, we have to post it as a meeting, which is fine. We can
Oh,
do
I
that,
shouldn't,
but-
or should
Oh, no,
I?
it's fine. I think there's a 21st and a 27th.
But anyway, we can
We'll
figure it
work
out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
we'll figure it out.
We'll talk to you because you haven't had a chance.
Yeah.
to-
Yeah, I was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so.
And I was going to request that at some point, wherever staff feels it's most appropriate, if we could get some information on what is happening in our instructional programs to support our gifted learners as well. I've had some questions about that, so if anybody else, I don't know if anybody else is interested in hearing where that fits into our curriculum and instruction, but that was also a parent request I've received.
Might be part of the LCAP, when we get the LCAP rundown.
I'm fine letting staff decide that whenever
So
you guys think it's appropriate.
We will talk about what makes it, whether we fit it into something or a separate conversation about it. So let us, if you don't mind, we'll talk through. As you might imagine, I know Ed Services team is pretty overwhelmed.
Going
We have
on
a lot
right now,
going on.
yes.
So, but we'll talk it through and see what we can figure out, if that's okay. Yeah.
Okay, anything else? All right, then we're going to adjourn to closed session.
Wait. You do have to.
Oh, we
ask
have to
for-
sign stuff for
Wait.
Renee.
You have to ask for public comment in case anybody wanted to
Oh.
make public comment relative to closed session.
Does anybody have public comment relative to closed session? Evidently not. Okay, we are adjourned to closed session.